Will the July meeting of the Town of Nags Head Board of Commissioners please come to order? Let's begin our meeting with a moment of silence, please. Continue with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a motion to amend the agenda and then accept the amended agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to postpone item G2 until mid-month.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Just for the information of everyone here this morning, item G2 is a public hearing for the rezoning request to move the western boundary of the commercial outdoor recreation overlay district 2,400 feet to the Washington Baum Bridge. We're not hearing that this morning because the mailing to the adjacent property owners was 1 day late. It was only 9 days instead of 10 days, and we had a complaint on that, so we are deferring that to our mid-month meeting. But many of you here are here this morning to speak to that issue, and we would like to hear you. So we will ask you to come forward during our next item on the agenda, which is the audience response item, and we'd like for you to come forward and express your opinions at that time so we can make sure that everyone is heard. I want to apologize for that, but it was a slip up in the mailing that everything else was in order except that one day slip up in the mailing. There being no further discussion on the motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. There being none. Now is the time for our audience response. We'd ask that you would come forward and speak this morning, and those of you who are here who want to speak on the Pond Island issue, I'll ask you to come forward at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Trey Adams. My family owns 7706 East South Shore Road on Pond Island. And we appreciate the leeway you've given us today, because most of us had thought this matter would be heard formally today. We've tried to organize our thoughts a little bit so we won't trespass on your time too much. I'm here today to object to the proposed extension of the overlay district to Pond Island. There's several reasons why Pond Island, from a geographic basis, is just not appropriate to be included into the overlay district. First, if you look at a map of the current district, and a map of Pond Island, you'll see they're vastly, vastly different. The existing commercial district is almost completely commercial in nature. As you come down 158, you've got restaurants, recreational activities. Primarily the only recent commercial property or residential property that's been built in there is the condominium right down at the corner. When you contrast that with Pond Island, you see a real difference. Yes, there is a portion that's zoned commercial that runs along Highway 64 between the little bridge and what we call the little bridge and the big bridge. But if you take a quick look at it, you'll see there's some 10 properties down there. The residential properties outnumber the commercial properties 2 to 1. And more importantly, there's something about the commercial properties. They aren't big properties, they're not active. There's 2 small hotels that don't have restaurants. and there's a retail shop at the Shell Shop. So the idea that this is a natural extension, I think, is a misnomer. It's a very different commercial mix when you look at the proposed extension area versus the existing area. The other difference, I think, in the geography is how the sound's laid out. And I don't know if y'all had a chance to look at the map. We've got some that we'll pass out later. But the current zone is this long, curving shoreline that's open to the sound.
I think Roberta can show that on the screen there if you would hand her a copy of it.
I'll see this.
So the existing district, which is in that upper left-hand corner in the red, runs south of 158, and it's a generally commercial area with open access toward the sound. On the south side of the bridge, where there are a number of current operators, again, it's open to the sound. And I'd ask you to contrast that with Pond Island, which is down there on the bottom. The commercial zone, proposed commercial zoning, is that little strip on the pond side down along, right along through there. That geography is very different. If you're operating an outdoor recreational activity, and there are a number of activities that are authorized, but I think we can all agree we're talking about waterborne activities. And the waterborne activities that operate in the current district can be observed by the operator. When the jet skis go out, they can see them. When the boats go out, they can see them. That helps them manage the activities. It helps them protect the public safety. Compare that to Pond Island, where at this point, the only person who's expressed an interest is down in the lower corner of the pond. Once that waterborne activity gets out the inlet, you can't see it, you can't manage it, you can't be sure that safety precautions are being taken. And so that element of geography really distinguishes Pond Island from the existing commercial district. There's another reason that we think there's a problem. When you set up the commercial district, you decided there should be some standards for conduct within the district to protect the public at large. One of those standards you've put in your general ordinances, section 4-231, which requires that waterborne activities have to be conducted a distance 600 feet parallel from the estuary shoreline of a residential district. I think that's good policy. You didn't want the jet skiers down on 158 going up and buzzing the folks in Old Nags Head Cove or up in the village. But if 600 feet is good public policy, it's completely inconsistent with Pond Island. There are some 40 residential lots around that curve, around the pond. We're also talking about the western edge of the island where the crab shack used to be, and the natural, or the marina harbor they've built in there, and there are houses along that area. If you take the scale and draw 600 feet, it is physically impossible for somebody to conduct a waterborne activity and get in and out of that inlet. The only way you come and go is through that small inlet that's adjoined by one of my neighbors, and on the other side is the Oasis Hotel. You can't do it. There's also another reason you really can't do it. There's not a lot of water in the pond. We've got some speakers who will come up and talk to you about what the depth is in the pond and in the inlet and what it's like out front. You know, there's a reason. I noticed in the letter that was sent out announcing this hearing, there's an interest in operating a parasailing business. I honestly don't know much about parasailing, but I've seen them. They look like pretty big boats with inboard engines. There are no inboard engines in the pond. There's a reason you can't get out. I think that's why the parasailing businesses that operate in our area don't even operate out of your district because it's not deep enough. They come out of Shallowbag Bay and they come out of Manio Harbor. Even the dolphin tours that do operate on the south side of the causeway. If you're familiar with the area, there's a slough from the little bridge that runs pretty much unbroken down to the deeper water in the channel, because most days the dolphin are somewhere between Pirates Cove and Wanchese Harbor. The geography of Pond Island is completely inconsistent with an extension of this overlay district, and I hope you'll be prepared to take that action when you meet next 2 weeks from now. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Who would like to speak next?
My name is Blake Driscoll, 139 West Marina Drive on Pond Island. My comments are a little more emotional than previous speakers. He did an excellent job. I've been there 30 years, and my children have grown up playing in the pond, whether we're on a paddle boat or float or sailboat. I mean, a sailboat. And the inlet he was talking about, oftentimes when we try to get sunfish out, we have to tack a number of times in this 20-yard wide inlet due to the nature of the wind. And I cannot see a commercial boat trying to get in and out of there with a sailboat tacking back and forth trying to get out of there. But mostly it's the children playing in that pond that with commercial boat activity that I'm concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Steve Driscoll. I concur with the previous speakers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and Commissioners, good morning. My name is Ernest Nagata. My wife and I own the property at 118 South Marina Drive on Pond Island. We've owned the property for a number of years and moved down there about 2 years ago, and we're now permanent residents. I'm here today to stand in opposition with a number of my neighbors in opposition to the proposed expansion of the overlay district. Pond Island is a beautiful, very serene, very quiet residential neighborhood. The addition of commercial water sports activities in and around Pond Island, in my view, is going to drastically change the character of the neighborhood. I believe I stand with many of my neighbors in opposition to the proposed expansion. We had a neighborhood meeting last Saturday in which I think a vast majority of the homeowners who were present on the island at that time attended the meeting. A few could not because they had other commitments. Of those who attended, I believe there was universal opposition to the proposed extension. A large number of homeowners and a good many of their children have submitted letters to the board in opposition, and some are here today to speak on their specific concerns. I'd like to speak first to an important public policy issue. Trey Adams spoke to the public policy incorporated in Code Section 4.241. Another is that the town of Nags Head, in its 2010 land use policy, it clearly stated a policy against extension of the outdoor recreation overlay district. In fact, the town expressed a policy favoring reduction of that district if circumstances warrant. I'd like to quote a brief passage from the 2010 land use plan at page 76. And I quote, "It shall be the policy of the town to occasionally review the adequacy of these regulations and make the necessary modifications when public health, safety, and welfare issues arise. The town shall not enlarge the overlay district and shall consider reducing the district to size or amending the uses when conflicts develop, priority, close friend, end of quote." So the town's policy could not be more clear. I would think that if the town is to override or repeal that policy and overrule the objections of a large majority of homeowners on Pond Island, it should have a very strong public interest reason for doing so. I don't see that public interest. The commercial water sports activities that might become available in that enlarged zone are available elsewhere along the causeway or nearby. On the other hand, I do see a number of adverse consequences to the Pond Island community if the board approves the application. Others will speak to many of those concerns. But a question I would ask is why, on what basis, the development board would want to approve this application. in contravention of clearly stated town policy and in conflict with Section 4-231 of the Town Code. To finish up, I'd like to mention a few specific concerns and then yield to others. First, one of my neighbors, Dr. Richard Peterson, who could not be here today, asked me to mention the potential for increased erosion on the northern shore of the pond, which due to increased wave action from frequent commercial boat traffic. That section of the pond shoreline has been left in its natural state. It's not bulkheaded, and I personally like to see that. Dr. Peterson referred to a small tree on that shoreline that has halfway fallen into the water because the soil around its roots is washed away. I think that tree will soon be dead. My wife and I took a photograph of the tree, and a copy of that photo was included in a package of homeowners' letters delivered to the board. Second, Trey Adams spoke about the narrow inlet to the pond and the skinny water around the pond, around the island, and others will elaborate in more detail on that. But I'd like to relate two incidents that I experienced that illustrate some of the potential concerns. First, I was recently in a boat approaching the pond to re-enter the pond through the inlet, and there was a pontoon boat coming out. So one of us had to give away. Naturally, it was us, and that's difficult to do in that area because the channel is so narrow, and it's difficult to turn around or move around without going aground. Secondly, on the northern shore of the island, there's a very narrow channel of slightly deeper water where boats traverse to go west or south from Pond Island. And many boats go at a fairly rapid clip to stay on the plane and avoid getting to the bottom. Now, I've seen children playing in that area, close to shore, but also very close to the boat channel. And to me, that would be a very serious concern. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your comments. Who else would like to speak?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Philip Davis, Jr. I'm a 27-year owner of property at 7724 Southeast Shore Road. My wife and I own that property. And I'm here to speak against the extension of the overlay. I'll leave the 600 feet arguments and those types of things to the attorneys. I would like to just bring up a couple of really common sense issues as to why this is a bad idea. The first one is safety. Several speakers have talked about the narrow entrance to the pond, the fact that children play in the pond, the congestion that is bound to occur as water activities expand, and it's just not safe in that area to have the activities that could result for the extension of this overlay. It's just not safe. Not only that, on the land, left turns out of Marina and from the roadway are very, very hazardous. Cars are coming off that bridge. There's a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, and I doubt very seriously if very few cars are under that. Most of them are more than that. And it only takes a few seconds traveling at 55 and 60 miles an hour for cars to zip through that zone. And with people coming out, the congestion that would be added by people coming in and using those facilities makes it very dangerous. We've already had one fatality over there. That was last year. So it's not safe to do this in that area. It's been previously mentioned about the erosion. There is erosion in there. And my lot is one of the lots that faces the pond and where some of that occurs. The additional wave activity that will result from this is bound to increase erosion. I understand that they're even considering allowing or be a request to allow the jetpack to operate out of the pond. I don't know if any of you have seen that or know about that, but that generates a lot of wave action. And it just adds to the problems that we have there. Lastly, I would ask you to remember the quality of life that would be affected by this. We have been there now for a long time. The visions and the sights and the scenes that we have are just wonderful. And to have them interrupted by the noise and the other activity that would result from increased activity over there is just not right. And my understanding is that under if the overlay is extended, that people can operate things over there up till 11 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. And for those of us that live there, this is just wrong. And I would appreciate you voting against the expansion of this overlay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Who would like to speak next?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, good morning. My name is Karen Adams, and my family owns 7706 East Shore Road on Pond Island. I have 2 children who have grown up spending their summers on Pond Island. My daughter is 12, and my son is 15. They learned how to swim in the pond, how to sail in the pond, paddle a kayak, and fish. They are out there every single day. And now I see my 3 nieces, who are 10, 8, and 4, doing the same things. One of them is right here. It is an extremely protected and safe area for our children to learn and play. In addition to the pond, they use the dock out front for swimming and boating as well. I am very concerned about the commercial traffic associated with turning the pond into an outdoor recreation zone. I know that you are talking about commercial property, but you are really rezoning the pond and sound right out front of our home. Please do not vote to extend this overlay district into our backyards. My little niece would like to read a letter that she wrote because they are very concerned about the pond as well. We're going to try to give this a shot. Can you see her?
Mic down so we can get our own record.
This is, can you say your name? Hi,
Hi, my name is Logan Jones. I heard that it will be dangerous for me to swim in the pond because big boat traffic. I love to swim, kayak fishing, and ride in my paddle boat. It makes me sad because I might not be able to do those stuff. Please don't let this happen. I'm begging you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Janie Molster. I'm like Karen Adams, a mother that owns property on Pond Island. We're at 7726 East Shore Road. And I have 5 children who've done the same thing as the Adams family. It's really a little oasis. I just had house guests down who said, it's so quiet and private here. How can you be that close to the bypass, to the causeway, and have such a little peaceful world? And you know, speaking to that, I'm like another person who is just up here. I'm very emotional about it, and I'll try to stick to the facts, but it will dramatically change our quality of life for sure. My great uncle bought his property on the other side of Pond Island over 40 years ago. I have a first cousin who lives there now, a brother who lives there. It's a real family neighborhood. And I'll tell you, the mayor and another commissioner came out this week very nicely, and I was able to give a little example of getting out of the cut by the causeway. So I got on my, out of the cut of the pond. I got on my paddle board and started at one corner and would paddle a few strokes, stick my paddle down, and hold it up in the air. And I think you all saw, we were dealing with 2 feet of water until we're about 25 or 30 yards. I guess, Trey, is it? Like 48 feet. 48 feet. So what we do, when you really have navigable water, you are in a very narrow passage, and I've got some pictures to show you, but it would be the equivalent of, we are as narrow as the passageway in Nags Head Cove. So you're basically talking about running commercial use out of somewhere like the Cove. We're much narrower than, say, what is the area up further in the beach? Where the Willers live? what is that called? In Collington, we're much narrower than the passageways there. So, you know, I would invite any of you to come back and have a look at this. I'm happy to do it again. It looks like a really nice opening, but I think you can attest it is very narrow and very dangerous. The other thing we have is the hotel that we bank up to. Often their guests can put their boat in and tie up there. So we're also decreasing the width of that. Boats can just tie up all the way the length of that pier, so that we lose, you know, another 15 to 20 feet to that. So it's a terrifying safety issue as a mother, but you know, it's also an emotional issue just to the traffic and the chaos I think that it would bring. And I thank you so much, but I'd love to give these pictures to you all to sort of start
Good.
at the end.
You can start right here. Start with Commissioner Harris, if you would, please.
You see the stakes? So that's actually where navigable water is rolling. Here, it's less than half of.
These all the same.
Yeah. So if you look at the center, stakes right here are really where the deep water starts. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's William Blow, and I reside at 7730 East Shore Road. And I'm going to speak about several things that most have already been a little bit covered, and I'd like to pass out some literature if I'd be allowed to each one of y'all so you can look at it when I discuss it. As a resident on this island, I just heard about this previous weekend. And I'm very concerned because I spend about 40 to 50% of my time on this island. And the biggest concern I've gotten, if you don't mind, I'd like to even let them put some pictures up to show a little bit more contrast to what we got to speak about. This map here that you're showing, east of the small bridge, you've already got this set up and zoned for outdoor commercial use. On this condition, now moving it back further west, you're actually adding one business in which, if you take and look at this second photo, on the east side of this small bridge, you've already got 3 businesses operating for outdoor use. You've got the ability to have boat travel, jet skis, everything. On the northern side, the top right-hand corner is already a jet ski operation that recently on Sunday, right after having the meeting we counted up to 12 jet skis out there. It's pretty intensive. Used to, they came really close up to the island. Now they've got buoys and they're respecting the 600 feet zone, but we're concerned about what's going to happen when you come out of the lagoon at all. There's going to be no governing, there's no channel. The next concern I've got is this piece of property. I have nothing against these people. I don't know these people. I've never met any of these individuals requesting for this zoning. What I am concerned about is looking at the aspect of this property. We're talking about 49 people on a dolphin cruise boat and potential jet skis and parasailing. I really don't see how you're going to do the parking. I don't see any way in the world we're going to have that parking. So what we see happening is the parking is going to probably end up going on Marina Drive, which is going to restrict our entry. Also, I'm concerned about the fact that if you take 49 people there and jet skiers and a parasailer, what about the septic system? How are you going to take care of all this waste and trash? Yeah, a little bit to the left. a little bit more to the left. The next thing I want to talk about is the actual inlet. The inlet right there is an unusual inlet in which you have a wildlife wetlands buffer zone. Okay, also you got really shallow water in there. Any kind of boat traffic that you go out of here up that has any type of large boat motor is going to end up having erosion really bad. If you look also on the top arch of that Pond Island, which is East Shore Road, everything along that East Shore Road is a natural buffer. And also wildlife are nesting in those areas there. There's no bulkheads. It's all natural because it's had no reason to have to bulkhead it. On the north side, which is the same side, we already have a buffer zone. What I'm really concerned about is when, let's say we do let this operation go forward and they get out of that inlet. Now the way to get out to bigger water is to go parallel along the bulkhead on the north side of Pond Island's arch. It's the only channel. And now I'm going to speak a little bit about that channel, what we've experienced and what we're experiencing more and more. And when I say that channel, it's not really a channel, it's just a deeper body of water. I wouldn't call it a channel. I want to show you what happens when the winds blow or the tide goes out. What you're looking at right now is land. There's no water there. Okay, between that land and that pier that's associated right there in that pole, there is some water in 3 to 4 feet on the deepest times. Where you're seeing right now is probably 18 inches. So, and on the other side of that, you can continue further out and you've got low spots and you don't really have any deep water to operate this business. And if you look right here, this is actually going back towards the west of the arch. You see you got land the same way. I really don't. We constantly have even outboard boats that are not used to the area that always are getting stuck. We're going out and helping them get up. I really don't see how a boat, a parasailing boat's going to operate out of this thing. One of the other concerns I got is vegetation. You've got a lot of aquatic vegetation right around Pond Island, both in the lagoon and on the northern side. If you look at the northern side, that's a whole lot of vegetation. That aquatic life is going to be disturbed. So with all this in mind, what we're concerned as a resident, this is a really quiet community. We bicycle, we swim in the lagoon like everybody said. We're concerned about all the noise pollution. We're concerned about all our properties losing value of this commercial situation. And the biggest thing we're concerned, if you actually do rezone this, the people that are asking for it may be great people, but what happens in the future? There's no limitation once it's ever rezoned. There's nothing that will stop the growth for the rest of the businesses. Thank you for the time, and I appreciate it if you'd vote against this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anyone else care to speak this morning?
Good morning. I'm going to pass a photo. My name's Greg Anderson. My home is at 111 West Shore Road. And the comments that have already been made have addressed the town code issues, the safety issues. I just want to leave you with a kind of a visual impact of what a change in the code or the zoning could mean. If you would, in your mind, take a little trip with me, starting at Mania. If you're coming up to the Baum Bridge, you look to your left and you see all those boats. You reach the top of that bridge. When you start coming down, if you're going too fast, your car's probably bobbing up and down a little bit. But once it settles down, you look off to your left and you see that row of houses. Some of those piers are no longer there because the hurricane kind of took out a few of them. But as you get to the foot of the bridge, you see right there to your left the Daniels Crab Shack. If you're not going too fast when you go by and you look across, you'll see a house right across the canal. That's my house. And that pier sticking out with a gazebo on the end, which I know you've seen many times, that's my pier. If you're not going too fast, I can probably tell who's in the car with you, because it's from my dock across the canal, across the Daniels property, to the right-of-way, to the causeway, is about 188 feet. That's the canal and the Daniels property to the road right-of-way, 188 feet. If I put a football on my dock beside my house, you've got a number of professional football players that could make a field goal over a goal that's on the property line. I mean, that's how close my property line is to the causeway right-of-way, across the canal and across Daniels property. And I think you've already heard about your town ordinance, which I think was properly made and thought out when this overlay district was conceived, that 600-foot buffer. We've got in my case, it ranges from the upper 90s to the 70-foot range across the canal to the Daniels property. And only, like I said, about 188 feet plus or minus to the road right away. So that it's too close to a residential zone. And that canal, like the others on the west end, or excuse me, on the east end of the island, that canal is the only access to 24 homes on the east side of the island. And most of those homeowners, you can see boat docks in the back, most of them are boaters, they all have to come out of that canal. And that's part of the Pond Island community on the east side and the west side. There's only 2 exits out of the water behind the causeway. One you see right there, and the other by the oasis. And those canals range from restrictions from 70 feet to 100 plus feet on the other side. I will simply say that I will submit that you should follow your town code, which I believe your town manager mentioned in a letter back in June, that 600-foot buffer. This zoning request is not in compliance. And you can see, if you're kicking that football off my dock, it's way too close. And I would just submit that you should deny this request with rezoning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Keely Kohler, and I reside at 7730 East Shore Drive. And I'd like to be the voice for a resident at Pond Island that can't speak for themselves. We have a resident that is protected by the Migratory Bird Protection Act. It's nesting ospreys. If you'll notice in that photograph, that pole is a few feet off of our dock. And when jet skis, kayakers, anyone in the water in that area, those birds are disturbed. I've seen them fly up, and they will leave the nest, leave the young when anyone gets close to them. We do our best to try to watch out for them, but somebody needs to understand that they are also a resident and they're a protected species. And they live there too. It's their home. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the board. My name is Barbara Del Viller. My husband and I reside at 7807 North Shore Road, and we've lived there for over 12 years. I, too, am opposed to the rezoning to extend the commercial outdoor recreation overlay district along the stretch of the Little Bridge to the foot of the Big Bridge. The rezoning will have a negative impact on our community on Pond Island, with more traffic, parking along the shoulder, which would lead to more trash and more sightseers. Not to mention opportunities for other water sports to include parasailing, jet skis, and a jetpack, which I hear is on the agenda for next month. While the businesses around would benefit from this, Pond Island residents would have the effects in a negative way. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
My name is Robbie Swain. I reside on 7708 East Shore Drive, and you'll be delighted to know that I'm the last speaker. Find out. I think. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody told me to. But what I wanted to do is to thank you folks. I have had a home here for 26 years. I grew up in Washington County. I came over here on the two ferries past draftees many years ago. I've been coming a long time. I came down here with my uncle to Pond Island many years ago. Now I'm happy to have my sister there, my cousins there. The Owens, who I think you know, live there. We love that little place. And the first sight you see when you come over, as someone showed you, is this the first part of Nags Head. I mean, you see that, and it's a throwback to the old days. Little old village, boats, and then you see that wonderful job that the Oasis did on their facility. That's a nice way to enter Nags Head. But the one thing I'd like to ask you to consider is that most municipalities go through great efforts on getting comprehensive land plans, having their staff do all kinds of things, so that when people buy and make investments, that they know what they're going to get and what they can expect. And the horror for you elected officials is when someone comes up and says, I bought my retirement home and I love it, but there's a shopping center going beside it. Municipalities all across the state and the country go through great effort to say, here's what could happen, here's our comprehensive land plan. Be aware and make your investments accordingly. We have done that on Pond Island, and there's now a petition by one resident out of the 54 that wants to do a game changer. Now, you say it's an overlay district, but it's actually a zoning change. And so now, all of the residents who've made their investments are looking at something that's going to change. That's why we advise realtors, attorneys, please tell the people what the zoning is going to be so they can make their choice accordingly. I don't think this is a battle that you commissioners want to fight. I know it's not, because you commissioners are the people who have refurbished the beach. You've helped the commercial people with their parking. We have an issue with Jeanette's Pier that we all need to pull in there and try to save that. So I just wish you would hope and consider the people that live in Pond Island and oppose this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there others that like to speak?
Good morning. Board members, thank you for allowing the opportunity for us to express ourselves.
Your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Andres Del Villar. I have a home in Pond Island, 7807 South North Shore Road. And I got up this morning and I said, well, maybe I just show my sign and I won't have to do any talking. But it's a good thing I did, because my wife stole all my lines. Basically, I'm totally against this rezoning. We are going to encounter more drive-thrus, and we have a lot of them now. More noise, more traffic all along the road there. The trash is going to increase. We have been picking up a lot of trash from people that go there to watch the sunset. And after the sunset is down, they go and have dinner, lunch, and breakfast sometimes. And everything stays right there. With this change, that all is going to increase. The pollution that the motors are going to create, the property values is going to decrease. And we basically don't want to have the pond become a Disney World of Nags Head. And I guess that would be it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Others who would like to speak on this subject or any other subject that's not on the agenda?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, others that are present. My name is Rod Holloman. I reside at 122 South Marina Drive. Is this a great-looking crowd or what? I mean, daggone. I'm not one that's very comfortable speaking in front of large crowds, so if I'm a little nervous, please forgive me. Everything that's been said, I agree with it 10 times. And I'm sure you do too. So recognize my opposition and vote the way that we think it should be voted. But I want to make a couple points. If this is such a good idea, where's everybody that wants it? I don't see them. So that's kind of unusual. I've been in several rezonings in different municipalities as the person that wanted the rezone. So I'm on the different side of the fence today. You know, we went there. We tried to be there to present our case and explain it. So do we even have members of the planning department here today? Is this what? Is anybody from the planning department here?
Yes, we have the chairman of the planning board and our planning staff here today.
Planning staff. You know, I'm not going to say everything that's already been said, but I do believe all of it. I'd like to ask them a question. Could they come take the podium, tell me why it's such a good idea? Thank you for your time.
Okay, anyone else?
I think maybe I am the last one. Is that correct? All right. I'm William B. Jones, reside at 77112. Well, okay, I'm close, at any rate. But let me just say a happy 4th of July weekend. I'm sure you got other things to be concerned with, and I hope it's not Arthur that's coming to town. Hope not. Everybody has had an opportunity to speak and say what they think. I had my daughter Karen came up with one of my granddaughters, and it reminds me of the fact that why we even ended up here, I think it's 28 years ago. And that was because of our 3 kids. And we wanted them to experience what we had experienced as kids in this area. And that was doing everything that you've heard, the boating, the swimming, the playing out in the water, all those type of things we wanted our kids to experience, and they did. And now, wonderfully, our kids, my 3 kids, have got their kids here. And they're all sitting right up in this area, and they've written you letters and why they want to keep it the way it is. And I'm concerned about it because of the safety. I'm concerned about, as has been brought up, about the traffic that we have to face getting in and out. And I think all these things are real concerns. And we have to look at it from the standpoint, does it make any sense to increase the safety factor that we're dealing with right now? And I'm going to just close with one thing, and that is what I heard the mayor say, that the notification that came out to us 9 days rather than 10 days was a slip-up. I think that's what you said, slip-up. And what I'm going to propose is that I hope that this group doesn't have the slip-up. And I hope that you will look at all the facts that have come out today, and I hope that you will vote in our favor. I want to thank you very much for taking your time, and we're out here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, last but not least. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name's Tammy Gully. I am here on behalf of myself, my husband, and my 2 children, my sister-in-law that resides at 7802 South Virginia Dare Trail, my mother-in-law, Donna Gully, that resides at 7804 South Virginia Dare Trail, and my husband and I are proud owners of the new lot right beside, or not the new lot, but the lot that we just purchased, 7808 South Virginia Dare Trail. My husband grew up coming here as a boy, staying over at the Fin and Feather with his parents. I, again, agree with everything that has been said today, and I thank everybody for their preparation and presenting everything so well. We truly oppose this. This is home away from home for us, and purchasing this property, my plan one day is to be a resident here, a full-time resident. That's my goal. But I don't want to be in the middle of any kind of commercial boating access for a 49-passenger pontoon boat, taking people out to see dolphins. It's a safety hazard for our children. This is where our children ride bikes. They run, they play, they swim in the pond. Our dogs swim there. Environmental impact, I think it's going to totally, like they said, have more erosion. The birds that nest, it's just all in all not a good idea. And we just pray that this will be knocked down and you will not let this rezoning go through. And my little girl would just like to read her letter, telling who you are.
Hi, my name is Sydney Gully, and I'm 11 years old. I've been coming to Nags Head my whole life. This place is my second home. I really don't want this rezoning to happen. We have a space in front of our house to play in the water. We jump and play all the time. I also don't want people coming in the front of our house. When we cook out sometimes, I really don't want all the noise, and when we are eating or just hanging out in our yard, I just feel like it's a safety issue.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, are there others? Any speakers on another subject? Jack?
New chapter. I'm pleased that my two grandsons are here so they can see democracy in action at a town and the citizens of a town. Jack McCombs, I live in Kill Devil Hills, but I'm a resident of the Outer Banks. I'm here to thank the board, the mayor, the police department for the support that they've given for the last 6 years for a group called the Bike to Build. That's a national nonprofit that rides across the United States. They come here in May. As they pedal across the United States, they stop about every 5 days and they help rebuild and build new houses for Habitat for Humanity, for people that cannot afford good housing. These kids, I should say young adults, mostly they're undergraduates or just graduated from college. They ride road bikes. Nearly every one of them have no experience on road bikes. And when I first learned this 6 years ago, I was really concerned. Road bikes are not like standard bicycles. You can crash real easy until you're experienced. I was concerned that they would come to Nags Head, to the Outer Banks, and one of their cyclists would be severely injured or even killed on these roads because of this inexperience. I was so concerned I came to Nags Head. That was a previous administration. They very quickly agreed with me, and every year for the last 6 years, the Board of Commissioners and the mayor have stepped forward and provided the type of safety precautions that we need. The last day that they're here, they have what is called a wheel dip ceremony. They go down to one of the beach accesses in Nags Head, and after a speech by one of the elected officials, this year it was by the mayor, they take their bicycles down on the beach and they dip the rear wheel into the Atlantic. When they eventually get to San Diego, they take the same bicycles and they dip the front wheel into the Pacific. Chief Brinkley, the officers that work for him, the town staff, particularly Roberta, and you folks on the board, thank you very much, because every single year we have sent these kids out. They know a lot more about safe bicycling. None of them have ever been hurt here. And to tell you how grave this can be, this group has had cyclists killed at other locations. It's never happened here, and I'm relatively confident it never will happen. So thank you very much. And there's a nice photograph of them dipping their wheel.
Thank you very much, Jack. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in our audience response time this morning on any subject that's not on the agenda? Mr. Murphy?
My name is Richard Murphy. I live at 8817 South Old Organ Inlet Road. Mr. Mayor, distinguished commissioners, I decided, I am chairman of the planning board. I decided to get up, since we have so many citizens here. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out. The planning board and the planning department has two functions. There's short-term planning and long-term planning. And long-term planning means we need citizens' input in order for the planning board to make recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. We would relish having citizens' input at any of our meetings. We have recently implemented a audience response section in our agenda. Our agendas every month are published on site so that you can see what's coming up, so that you don't have to wait till you get to this point, for a public hearing. You can actually come and speak to us. We as board members, and I think Mark Cornwell is our vice chairman, and I think I can speak for all the board members that we would love to have citizens' input. And it is very important at all levels of government, and I would encourage you to pay attention to our agendas. We meet once a month, the third Tuesday of every month, and we would love for you to come and make comments and give us some in-feed. After all, the town is our town. The citizens have the ability to input and make impact, not necessarily at this level, but at the planning level. So I would thank you for coming, and I would really appreciate any kind of in-feed into the planning board that you can feed to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Are there others who would like to speak this morning? If not, I'll now declare our audience response time closed for the day. Why don't we take a 5-minute break right now?
Thank you, Mayor. That's probably clear the room now. Maybe you are.
Board, please come to order. Next item on the agenda is recognition of a new employee and some folks that have been here for 10 years. Ralph, are you here this morning?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. This morning I would like you to introduce you to Peter Weckelman. Pete works at the garage as one of our fleet mechanics. Pete moved here in 1990 from Connecticut. He now resides with his wife Terry, his two daughters Jenna and Jordan in Powell's Point. Pete came to us when one of our fleet mechanics was injured, filled in for him, and we were lucky to retain him. He is certified in welding and in steel fabrication. Pete, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to have you. Welcome aboard.
You know, we expect long term.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for being here.
Nice to meet you too.
Chief Brinkley.
Mayor, good morning, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to come before you today to recognize one of the police employees, Ms. Dee Johnson, for 10 years of service to the town of Nags Head. If you call the police department, if you come in, Dee is usually the one that greets you, and she's, come on up here so they can see you. She is very helpful to our citizens and our visitors. She will go out of her way to see that they get the answers and to try to answer their questions the best that she can. She loves to talk, which is really just serves her so well in her position, but she's kind of embarrassed about being in front of everybody. And I told her, I said, I've really got a great speech prepared, and then you're expected to give remarks. But anyway, Dee has been with us for 10 years. She's certainly an asset to our front office, out of her way to help our citizens, visitors, the police officers, and we're just really grateful to have her. She lives in the metropolis of Wanchese with her husband, Norman, her daughter, Ashley, and she has a grandbaby, Tiffany. She's very active in her church, and in her free time, she enjoys spending time with her family and working at her house. Dee, thank you for 10 years.
Dee, we thank you so much for your 10 years, and you know we expect at least another 20. Kelly?
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Here today to introduce Lily Nieberding, recognize her for her 10 years with the town. Lily started work with the town in April of 2004. She was an office assistant with the Public Works Department. In May 2005, she came over to the Planning Department. Here in the Planning Department, she's our permit coordinator, office manager. Her duties include reviewing and processing building permits, maintaining the department webpage, serving as our interdepartment IT. She is support for our very difficult permitting software, which I've yet to learn. She prepares a variety of monthly and quarterly permitting reports. She responds to inquiries, complaints from property owners, contractors, and the general public. When she's not here at work, she lives in Kill Devil Hills with her many pets. She enjoys walking on the beach, reading, kayaking, and she volunteers within the community very often. Lily is a huge asset to the Planning Department. We appreciate all of her knowledge and experience, and I want to personally thank Lily. She's been invaluable to me these past few months in bringing me into the world of requisitions, purchase orders, and invoices. So, thank you very much, Lily.
Well, the 10 years sure have flown by in a hurry.
They have.
So good to have you.
Time flies when you're having fun.
And we're looking forward to that next one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your work. Chief Brinkley still back there? Or? You have some comments about the National Night Out proclamation?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead. Tell us all about it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought I kind of did it differently. National Night Out celebration is scheduled for Tuesday, August the 5th, beginning at 5 p.m. at the Nags Head Elementary School. This is our, it's the 31st annual National Night Out celebration, and for the town of Nags Head, we've done it for over 20 years. We're partnering with local businesses, local organizations that have committed so far to us are Jockey's Ridge State Park, the North Carolina Aquarium. There will certainly be having some neat setups there. We will have a seatbelt simulator from the Governor's Highway Safety Program, and the Coast Guard will be there with one of their inflatable boats, which the kids seem to enjoy. Last year, one of the canine demonstrations was a big hit, so we'll have them available as well. So we'd like to encourage everybody to come out for our National Night Out event on Tuesday, August the 5th, beginning at 5 p.m. We will have food that has not been confirmed yet what we're having, but it will be hamburgers and hot dogs or barbecue, and that's free. So please come out and join us and show support for the National Night Out Against Crime.
Thank you very much, Chief Brinkley. And it is quite a good night out. There's a lot of people there, a lot of fun, and I strongly encourage everyone to attend that. The proclamation that we have before us this morning is a proclamation for National Night Out 2014. Whereas the National Association of Town Watch is sponsoring a unique nationwide crime, drug, and violence prevention program on Tuesday, August 5th, 2014, called National Night Out. And whereas the 31st Annual National Night Out provides a unique opportunity for the town of Nags Head to join forces with thousands of other communities across the country in promoting cooperative police community crime prevention efforts. And whereas the Nags Head Community Watch Association plays a vital role in assisting the Nags Head Police Department through joint crime, drug, and violence prevention efforts in the town of Nags Head, and is supporting National Night Out 2014 locally. And whereas it is essential that all citizens of the town of Nags Head be aware of the importance of crime programs and the impact that their participation can have on reducing crime, drug, and violence in the town of Nags Head. And whereas police community partnerships, neighborhood safety, awareness, and cooperation are important themes of the National Night Out program, therefore, I do hereby call upon all citizens of the town of Nags Head to join the Nags Head Community Watch Association and the National Association of Town Watch in supporting the 31st Annual National Night Out on August 5th, 2014. Let it be resolved that I, Robert C. Edwards, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, August 5th, 2014 as National Night Out in the town of Nags Head, Dare County, North Carolina. This is the second day of July, 2014. Do we have a motion to adopt the proclamation?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign, and there being none. Thank you very much, Chief Brinkley.
Mayor, thank you.
Do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve as amended by the clerk.
Motion to approve as amended by the clerk. Is there a second? Motion seconded. Any discussion?
I'd like to add an additional one to that. I know the clerk had amendments to the June 11th meeting, but on the 18th, the minutes on the bottom of their page 3, where I asked a question about the 1 cent, myself, you, and the town manager all mentioned the legislative impact. And I think we ought to insert that in the front of the list there to formally record where that, what got us on the 1 cent increase, the 1 penny increase.
Would you like to amend the motion to include that?
I'd like to amend the motion to insert, quote, legislative changes to the privilege tax, comma, into the beginning list of items that the town manager, that are in the minutes by the town manager.
Is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
Okay. Motion to amend the original motion, which would be to add the language that Commissioner Ratzenberger has added to the minutes. Any discussion on that amendment? Not all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. There being none. Now we will vote on the motion as amended, would be to accept the consent agenda as amended by the clerk and as amended by the amendment we just voted on. Any discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. There being none. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing to consider a zoning ordinance text amendment submitted by Mr. Eddie Goodrich to add a new use category, group cluster housing, to the town code section 48-404 R2 district and 48407 C2. Mr. Lighty, I'll ask you to conduct a public hearing, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, we will begin the public hearing to consider that zoning ordinance text amendment. In this particular matter, the board sits as a legislative body. That means that no sworn testimony is required. But we will begin the public hearing by receiving the staff's analysis presented by Kelly Wyatt.
Thank you. As noted, Eddie Goodrich is the applicant today. He's here to seek adoption of a zoning ordinance text amendment change to Town Code Sections 48407 C2 Commercial District and 48403 R3 High Density Residential. The amendment would create a new use category of residential group development within the C2 and R3 districts only. The new use category would permit the grouping of multiple detached single-family dwellings on one parcel created from the combination of existing non-conforming lots which are adjoining and under the same ownership. The town already has similar use categories in the R2 district. Within the R2, that use category is aimed towards oceanfront homes that are threatened by erosion. We also have a similar ordinance in the SED 80 district. Those portions of the code were included in your packet for your consideration. While the applicant has made the request based upon some unique development concerns for a property that he owns, text amendments are not site specific, So I do want to note that this amendment may benefit some of the smaller previously platted lots when it comes to the management of stormwater and septic health with a cohesive planning approach. Essentially, the request would mimic what we know today as a cottage court. However, we have incorporated some design dimensional standards to regulate minimum lot area, setbacks, the distance between each structure, and the total number of bedrooms allowed. The total number of bedrooms allowed, as you'll see within your packet, it's discussed through a graduated scale, the number of dwelling units versus the number of bedrooms based upon the area of the lot itself. That was a request that was made by the planning board, so we did incorporate that. Parking, lot coverage, and height would be regulated as it currently is within the zoning district with no exceptions. As proposed, the new use would be a conditional use within both the C2 and the R3, so the planning board and the board of commissioners would have discretion to impose any additional requirements they saw necessary. Planning staff finds that there are benefits to a cluster group housing option. In some situations, it can result in reduced lot coverage through shared driveways and shared amenities such as swimming pools and recreational areas. Additionally, costs can be decreased when shared to develop and maintain stormwater and septic infrastructure. At their May 20th meeting, the planning board voted unanimously to recommend adoption of the proposed amendment with a few revisions, and those were incorporated into the ordinance that you received. Before the board begins their discussion, I did want to add, late yesterday we received some revisions from the town attorney, and if possible, if you could throw up the red line version, we can highlight those changes that was made. Mr. Leidy can jump in at any moment, but I think the majority of the changes related to condominium ownership.
Well, brace yourselves. The changes look extensive. They're not that extensive.
They're small print, though.
Well, that is kind of small print. Most of the majority of the changes were to the format of the ordinance and the way it was presented. So that's why it looks like there's such significant changes. There were some substantive changes designed to simply fine tune the language of the ordinance to meet the intent of what the applicant was seeking and what was trying to be accomplished by this. I don't want to speak to all the different changes except to say that with these changes, we feel that this ordinance will achieve its intended purpose if it's adopted. If there's any specific questions about it, I'll try to answer those.
Can we get a copy where we read it?
Yeah, there's also a non-red line copy that she can put up as well.
I'll hit the highlights very quickly. As you can see, they did not like my whereases. We have all new whereases. There was a reiteration that the use is approved by conditional use only and with the appropriate findings. Reiterating that the use applies only to lots with a minimum square footage of 15,000 square feet. Aside from that, all other zoning dimensional requirements should be met. The previous ordinance spoke to principal structures. There was an addition in there to also say any accessory structures must meet the 10-foot separation. On that graduated scale, we eliminated the first line, which was a little bit redundant, being you could have one home on a 15,000 square foot lot. It was unnecessary. There was clarification of public access ways and private shared driveways. And as we mentioned, subsection F had the most substantial changes addressing ownership and maintenance should the development be submitted for condominium ownership and the need for a set of covenants or bylaws to address that maintenance. Hopefully, between myself, Mr. Leidy, Mr. Goodrich, and our planning board members, we can address any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Wyatt?
I'd like for her to page up there just a little bit to that table. All right, that's it. In the write-up, we have the number of bedrooms should be capped at four bedrooms per unit. in total not to exceed 8 bedrooms per 16,000 square feet of land. And this table does not reflect that. You can have two dwelling units per lot that could only have 8 bedrooms, and 3 is 12, and 4 it would be 16. But
So that 10 should be 8?
that 10 should be 8 according to the language.
Oh, we have a current copy.
That's on page 3 of the presentation.
I think the language that you're speaking of was part of the staff memo included on page 3.
Yeah, so
What had essentially happened is this original staff memo, it was actually presented to the planning board on 2 different occasions. On the first submittal, Mr. Worsley had asked that planning staff look at a graduated scale. So there's the item that you're talking about on number 3, or
top of page 4 also.
right, or consideration of a graduated scale. So the planning board had recommended adoption of the graduated scale and not the language that had previously been approved. The language that I think you're talking about speaks to the number of bedrooms would be capped at 4 bedrooms per unit, in total not to exceed 8 bedrooms over 16,000 square feet. That was one of the options, or the graduated scale. And the planning board opted to go with the graduated scale.
SED 80, we limit those to 4 bedrooms, correct?
Correct.
Other questions for Ms. Wyatt?
Yeah, I
Mr.
had
Demers.
a question. This scale has changed now from what we had, but for example, if there are 3 dwelling units, is there a limit on the number of bedrooms in each unit? Or is it just a combination not to exceed 12?
Well, the ordinance as it stands now has a minimum number of bedrooms at 8. So under no circumstance would the bedrooms exceed 8 within any dwelling unit.
Okay, so you could have, for example, 8 and 4.
That could be proposed as a conditional use. It would come back through the planning board and board of commissioners, and it could be discussed at that time. But as it's written, yes, you could.
And is that what the intent was, to allow that?
That would mean 1 unit had no bedrooms, is that right? Under the 3. I don't.
Or 2.
You could have 8, 2 and 2.
Right, but not 8 and 4.
Right.
We did not include a cap on the number of bedrooms there, and we can do that if that's what the board would like.
I'm just trying to get the intent.
Mm-hmm.
And then does the language reflect the intent?
Our cap was at 8, so under no circumstance did we see that any of the dwelling units would exceed 8 bedrooms. But we did not, as I said, we did not put a maximum number of bedrooms on there. If the board would like to do that, we can certainly make that revision.
Commissioner Coon?
Ms. Coon?
Under our current ordinances for houses that exceed a certain number of bedrooms, then it kicks in architectural standards and so forth. I didn't see a reference to that in this proposed document. That's question 1. Question 2 is, given the legislative items coming out of Raleigh, isn't there a proposal to put a ban on limiting bedrooms?
There is, yes.
So I'm concerned on two different aspects.
Has not been passed yet.
Right. But I would like us, we talk about zoning updates, but I'd like us to be consistent. If this does allow for an 8-bedroom house, shouldn't it reference somewhere what our architectural standards are? And given the number of changes, no offense, John, at the last minute, I'd like to see a clean copy. I have a hard time with stuff that comes to us the day of the meeting and on the floor.
Commissioner Ratzenberger?
I've been confused from the start on this thing where between the combining and same ownership and different lots and who owns what and why this is like a cottage court when apparently it's 4 individual homes not under management, you know, like a court. I mean, I don't know where this is going. Can staff tell me why this is like a cottage court, other than the fact that it's a bunch of buildings on a lot?
Exactly. A cottage court is multiple dwelling units on one lot. This would ultimately result in multiple dwelling units on one lot, except under this circumstance, there's going to be parameters on lot coverage, setbacks, things of that nature. So there would not be that non-conforming element. We do need to reference architectural design. It just speaks, this ordinance speaks to those areas that would be amended, whereas all other dimensional requirements would remain in place. So I think it is important to make that cross-reference to architectural design in here.
I'm still back on mine. I mean, so are these possibly 4 units? Are they owned by one person and rented out?
They could be.
But they could be owned by 4 totally separate people.
They could be, and that was, I believe, part of the revisions that was made by the attorney, should there be a desire to essentially condo out the dwellings themselves. So that was part of the revisions made by Mr. Leidy and Mr. Gallup.
Why do we have this in R3? Do we have to put it in R3 to make it residential so we can refer to it in C2? Why are we inflicting this on the rest of R3?
Right. We have this in R3 because residential within the C2 reverts to the R3 dimensional requirements. Where R3 is just purely R3, that's where the majority of our 7,500 square foot non-conforming lots exist. So it would make sense that in the R3 is where we do have the most number of non-conforming lots that could potentially take advantage of this.
But how does that benefit the town?
It benefits the town through allowing the opportunity to take multiple non-conforming lots, combine them, have development opportunity there, and have regulations regarding overall lot coverage, setbacks, height, architecture, and potentially reduce lot coverage in some situations, and to help with stormwater with our new stormwater management ordinance.
We could help with stormwater management by turning this one into a retention pond.
Commissioner DeMeers.
I'd just like to preface this with that I feel generally favorable about this proposal, but I did have several questions which may become overcome by events based on the revisions here, but they dealt with units given access to shared driveways. Then there's mention of private driveways, and then ownership of driveways, non-specified, and amenities. But I think I'll just have to reserve those questions until I have a chance to review the new verbiage.
Those are issues that were taken care of by these revisions. The way to address that is by allowing the property to be converted into condominiums. There's no other way to deal with those issues. Otherwise, you only have one ownership of the whole parcel and the structures on the parcel. So the only way to allow for ownership of any of those improvements within the parcel would be to convert it to a condominium, which has other requirements that must be met in order for that to be done.
Okay. Commissioner Cohn?
Based on that, under a condominium, can somebody own the building and the land still retain in other ownership?
The common areas are owned by, the unit itself and the land underneath that is owned by the owner. The common areas, the area outside of the unit itself, is owned in common ownership amongst all the owners, generally speaking. Same thing goes with the various improvements, the streets, the sidewalks, and so forth. The original draft contemplated that those would be owned by an association. That's not the way it works. They're actually owned by the owners in proportionate amounts, but managed by an association. That's a state law requirement.
Okay, I guess I'm thinking about a place in South Nags Head where the units were all sold, but the underlying land stayed in one ownership.
Mm-hmm. I'm not familiar with that. Ordinarily, it's the footprint of your unit and the interior walls belong to you.
Well, I guess I have a similar question. Is that just specific to North Carolina? Because I personally own a condo in another state where the land is owned by one person and the bottom floor is owned by one person, but we all own our units.
That may be different, and it may vary from state to state. And North Carolina has specific state law requirements that govern condominium developments that have to be met, and there's no variation allowed for some of those requirements, including how the common areas are owned and how the improvements are held.
I also have an additional concern relating to the number of dwelling units and the number of bedrooms allowed. If one of the units, if there are 4 dwelling units on a property, but one of them has 8 bedrooms. And I'm concerned about that shared parking as to how that's going to work out, because with an 8-bedroom home, you could have 16 cars. And then there's not going to be any place for anyone else to park that own the other properties. I see all kinds of pitfalls related to that in the future.
If it's this board's desire that we take this back and make these revisions, one revision will be to go ahead and put a cap or to ensure that there's language that bedrooms are distributed evenly throughout the number of dwelling units. We can do that. We can address that and additionally add some language about parking.
I would think that if we approve this and I were to personally invest in something like this, I'd want to know when I got there I had a place to park. So both of those are concerns to me.
Kelly, one concern that I have is that based on the number of bedrooms allowed, this would increase density over what we currently have. In like the 20,000 square foot lot, you could have an 8-bedroom house now, and then you would have 10. You'd have a 8-bedroom and a 2-bedroom, almost accessory structure. And the same way with the 26,000 square foot. Personally, I would like to see this go back to the original language and cap it'd be capped at 4 bedrooms per unit. I think that's what we did in the SCD 80, and that made a lot of sense then. And there again, as Commissioner Walters said, it would be equal parking for everybody. I like the concept. I think we've got a lot of places in Nags Head that could be developed under this concept. We just have to be very careful that we don't create more problems and that we're not going back to the problems that were created when prior boards did away with cottage courts. And So I think we need to be real careful on ownership. So there are my comments. And any other board members have comments?
I'm sitting here, I'm a supporter of cottage court, so.
I know you are, and I think they're a good concept, and this is basically bringing back the concept, but let's do it right.
I agree.
Okay, any other further questions for Mr.
We're still, I suggest we conclude the public hearing after we give more opportunities for any further comments. If there's no further questions from Ms. Wyatt, let's move on to the applicant. Mr. Goodrich.
Good morning. I guess I should have brought my grandchild with me. Anyway, my name is Eddie Goodrich, and I'm the applicant. And I'd like to start off by saying I think that the concept of cottage courts and cluster housing is a positive step to resolve the problem of non-conforming lots in Nags Head, non-conforming cottage courts. Whalebone Beaches subdivision is a perfect example. It was platted and recorded in 1946, which was almost 70 years ago, and it just doesn't work today. It was actually platted when there was no town of Nags Head, so they didn't have the benefit of the planning department or benefit of the planning board or benefit of the commissioners, and they just basically created 40-foot wide lots. And it's the same problem that exists throughout Dare County. It's not typical. It's not just Nags Head by any stretch of the imagination. The advantages of cottage courts are more, you don't have to deal with the constraints of lot lines. You can place the houses where you want to place the houses as long as they have the adequate separation. You can park where you want to park. You can have more open space. You can have one septic system, one driveway, which eliminates 4 driveways instead of 1, put it that way. And the issue of this issue is not going to disappear by itself, and the only way it can be resolved is with the town's actions. So I'll answer any questions you have. I think, and I have one question for Mr. Lighty. So it's your legal opinion that you can't transfer the land under the building as in townhouse ownership?
That's not what I said. I'm not saying that. I think it depends on how the condominium is established.
Okay. I think we think the same.
Any questions for Mr. Goodrich?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Anything from the planning board on this? Mr. Murphy?
I too share Renee's concern. Anytime a document is changed, legally, it would be nice to go back to the planning board, for us to look at it before we actually bring it here. One main thing is shared infrastructure. That's one of the major advantages in doing this. The number of bedrooms and everything, obviously, we can tweak that down and get it to a point that it's satisfactory. But to be able to take non-conforming lots and from a stormwater, parking, any infrastructure, to be able to do something like this and make it more palatable, to development in Nags Head is exactly what the intent in doing this is. It's not one of my major concerns was, or I've got a couple of major concerns, was how does this impact the entire town, not just Eddie Goodrich's proposal, in his few lots. I think it impacts the town positively as long as we do it within reason. And one of my concerns too is the condominium concept. If you've got 4 lots, 4 owners, and they own the land underneath the condominium, then you've got 4 votes on a homeowners association, and if it's a 2-2 tie, we have to have some way of making that an odd number so that they don't get in I know that there's a cottage court in South Nags Head that's exactly what has happened recently, is two people want to do something, two people don't, and consequently, two end up paying for it, the other two do not because they didn't vote for it. So that's a possible problem, in doing this. But whether it be if it's a shared property, by a homeowners association that is made up of just owners, then maybe we need to put a requirement in there that it be an odd number, on the board, and it could be, some arbitrary person, but whatever. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy before he gets too far away? If not, all right. Thank you very much, Mr. Murphy. Any other comment on this proposed text amendment? Anybody from the public wish to comment at all? All right. Does the board wish to receive any further information on this before we conclude the public hearing? If not, we will conclude the public hearing at this time, and the board may deliberate on this proposed text amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Lighty. First of all, I'd like to apologize for being out of order a few minutes ago and discussing the issue.
Sometimes that happens.
Do we have a motion on the floor on this issue? Or would you rather discuss it first?
I'd like to ask a couple of questions and then probably make a motion.
All right.
I mean, just in general. Because this condo thing, now, they haven't gotten all of this condo stuff in there. But does this thing, if we were to adopt this thing, does each of these then have to come back to us as a site plan? Does that include reviewing whatever, in light of these discussions of shared driveways, ground ownership, and everything else that's come up here, does that include at that time, would we, I don't think it's our job to manage how 4 people in the condo association vote or even be concerned about that, but do we, as part of that condo document, is that part of the site plan we would be seeing when we do the site, the site plan? I mean, I'd hate to think that one came in here and it had such a, they made such a hash of the condo document that it wasn't meeting the intent of what we're doing for the shared facilities and all of the other stuff.
I refer that question to Mr. Lighty.
Well, the town would have to approve the submission of the proposed condo declarations, site plan changes, and so forth. Yes, there would be an approval requirement. So there would be further action required, whether it's administrator or board at the board level. There would be further action required in order to convert a single parcel multi-unit setup to a condominium type of arrangement.
Okay, so that sounds like we could have adequate control of this. I mean, I almost hate to have it because it's at the detail level, but if this became a fad or a new thing and the entire R3 district decided to join in and we had hundreds of, we would have control over what happened. So I live in a circle with shared driveways and all of that stuff. Sometimes it's a nightmare.
Get this on the floor and get some of our thinking going on, and maybe I'll make a motion that we defer this back to the planning board for clarification of the legal issues, and also that we change the number of bedrooms back to the 4 bedrooms per unit maximum, so that we don't increase density and we don't have a unmanageable conglomerate of housing on the lot. If we get a second to that motion, we can discuss it.
I'll second that.
Mayor, could I ask that your motion be condensed more to remanding it back to the planning board without being specific? Because then that would be the only things that you would be asking them to look at. And I think there may be more issues to look at than just those two.
Yeah, I would make it
Would
more.
you accept that as a friendly amendment?
I will accept that as a friendly amendment. If it,
Yes.
But I'll also add under discussion that I'm not going to vote for anything with more than 4 bedrooms max.
I think that's fair, but
okay.
Forgive me.
Well, we'll see what the planning board comes up with.
I think that that's fair. I think that there's language in here that we all would support, especially from the staff support. It's where we got down into the ordinance where there were differences of things. And then I'd like to see, for my own edification, what comes back from the attorney in our packet.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think I definitely need to see that, and I want to go on record. I very much support the concept. I think it is a concept that is going to help us develop some of these unconforming lots in a much more advantageous manner than one house per 6,000 square feet, or 5,000 square feet, or 7,500 square feet. I think we do better than that and have more open area and more green space, and not cover up as much as of our ground, have a nicer looking community. So we need to be careful and make sure we do it right. Any other discussion?
Oh, I agree. I mean, I see the potential benefits, for the long term for the town. I just want us to avoid any pitfalls from the get-go. And I would like to see the parking issue addressed somewhere in there, but I would like to see the whole thing in our packet.
And
Commissioner Beers?
Same comments.
And with that, the septic issue. I don't want to see parking lots become, septic fields become parking. I mean, we need to be concerned how that's going to work in there.
Well, keep the motion general as we said.
Right.
Commissioner
But I'm
Cahoon,
just-
and send it back to the planning board. I think the planning board has heard our concerns. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion of remanding this issue back to the planning board for their further consideration, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay, there being none. So, okay, thank you very much. Okay, we got Kelly and Ben Cahoon up now on reports from the planning board and the update on Gallery Row Roll and Stroll.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I will let Mr. Cahoon start out speaking about the events that we've had there in Gallery Row, and he's had an ongoing study that he's been working on, so I'll let him up.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Cliff, thank you for this opportunity, Kelly. After several months, many months of discussion on the topic of Gallery Row, in late April, I was engaged for the purpose of a study working with the town and Gallery Row business owners to identify ways ambitiously to increase commerce in the area, attract artists, attract and support new galleries, promote events, enhance the district's visual and spatial identity, and create a greater sense of neighborhood, personality, and character in the area. This effort's taken on greater urgency since the relocation of Yellow House Gallery out of the district and the demolition of their building. And I had a related conversation with a gallery owner at our drop-in workshop on June the 12th. As you know, many of these galleries have long-time owners who may or may not have succession plans. So what happens to Gallery Row when they retire or choose to move on for some other reason? Finding a sustainable business model for Gallery Row which engages all of the businesses and attracts young artists and art-loving entrepreneurs, is in fact urgent if we want to have an arts district in the town. At the drop-in workshop on June the 12th, we got a lot of positive engagement from the Gallery Row businesses and the community. And we asked questions like, why is the concept of a special district important? Why a district rather than simply unaffiliated businesses? How can the district be distinct, different, or special to its business owners, residents, and visitors? What are your impressions when you look at photographs or a map of the district? Is there anything you never noticed before? Is there anything that you see in a new and different way? And we know that Gallery Row includes not only galleries but other compatible businesses. So we asked them, how can these businesses cross-promote one another? How do they fit, or how can they better fit into a complete visitor experience? And of course, we asked them what improvements they thought were necessary, which might include physical improvements, zoning changes, or business practices and business culture. So for today, I want to share just a few of their responses. One is to facilitate the creation of shared gallery space through zoning grants or private development. One of the concerns is how do we get young gallery owners, potentially, young artists into the area. Facilitate the creation of an outdoor exhibit space. Secure a logo or similar visual element for the use of all the businesses and or promote the public exhibition of art throughout the district to make it visually unique. Increase available parking west of NC 12, in particular north of Abalone where there's not another beach access. Install lighting on the multi-use path. Install crosswalks on NC 12 at all of the cross streets, and install a crosswalk across 158 near Driftwood Satterfield. Secure or cause to be developed and maintained a smartphone app or mobile responsive website to promote the district and its businesses. And even rechristen the area as the Nags Head Arts District to make the location clear to prospective visitors. All of those emerged from that discussion that we had at that workshop, from the community and from the business owners. We hope to finish our report before the roll and stroll, which Kelly will highlight in just a minute. The report will include specific recommended actions for the business community and the town, which may include signage, landscaping, art installations, zoning regulations, event concepts, or other kinds of improvements. And I want to I'll leave you with a couple of images, but one mental image which suggests how all of Gallery Row might thrive. This past Friday night, about 9 p.m., Surf and Spoon was having live music. Sea Green Gallery was open later than usual. There was a good crowd at Red Drum. There was a lot of traffic on the multi-use path. And at that time, it was a really vibrant, it had a very vibrant, very positive feel. And it was good business for the restaurant, for the yogurt shop, and for the gallery. And I would suggest imagining all of that area from the Italian restaurant on the north end to the coffee shops to the shopping center to Seaside Art Gallery on the far corner, which is all pedestrian and cyclist friendly. Imagine that entire area with that kind of vibrant economic activity. I think that we can find ways and recommend some ways to move it in that direction, and that would be our goal. What you see on the screen is one of the notions that emerged from the workshop. A developer back in the 70s or 80s had put these masts up and hung signs on them to promote his businesses. A few of those masts are still there. And when the subject of public exhibition of art came up, we thought, well, what if you hung art that was in the public domain from those masts? It's not a sign, but it does create kind of a neat feel if these were distributed throughout the Gallery Row area. They are outside the right-of-way, so business owners could put them up on their own property. and it would create a really kind of neat feel in that area, and a neat identity. So that's sort of the kind of thing that will be one of the ideas that emerges. And after Kelly speaks, if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Just wanted to mention quickly, coming up July 10th, 5:30 to 8:30, it's the second annual Gallery Road Roll and Stroll. We have the poster up here for everyone to look at, and hopefully anybody watching on television will be inclined to leave your car in the driveway, hop on your bicycle, come down to the Gallery Road District, walk around, enjoy. There'll be art sales, live music, food, drink specials. Each individual location will have something special going on to partake of. So please come by, ride your bike, walk around, enjoy. Again, it's our second annual Gallery Row Roll and Stroll. Next Thursday, July 10th, 5:30 to 8:30.
Thank you, Kelly. Any questions for Ben or Kelly?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Ben, I've seen you at the workshops for the Pedestrian Planning Committee.
Yes.
One of the things that they showed at one of our recent meetings and to the board were paintings on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Has that been discussed at
It
all
has.
with the, okay.
It has, painting all kinds of things, streets, sides of buildings, power poles, and the idea, I think, visually is without sort of creating anything that's sort of out of control and overwhelming, is in a way that maintains public safety and that kind of thing. But yes, to do that kind of thing, to have participation by school children in some way, by the entire Dare County arts community. If you look at arts districts around the country, I mean, there are wonderful creative things being done that are, wouldn't cost the town anything. It's just a matter of what's permitted and what's encouraged. So yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
And thank you for your work, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm enjoying it. It's a pretty neat project.
Commissioner Walker?
I would also like to thank you for your work, and Kelly, and just the ongoing effort to help re-energize that portion of our town. It was once pretty vibrant, and I'm hoping that we can reestablish that vibrancy and get people out in the community and supporting the arts. And obviously this town has a long history of supporting the arts based on the art on our walls, the pieces that have been purchased in Town Hall. It's really quite an awesome display. And I can't remember the exact funding formula that was used. Renee may remember. But there was an arts commission, and I believe there was a separate body that was selected, people that have knowledge in the arts that oversaw that and made the selection every year for art. And I'm wondering if, I think it was maybe $10,000 a year, but I'm wondering if maybe we could reestablish something similar to look at perhaps outdoor art to help facilitate that same effort. I mean, there are all kinds of art. It doesn't have to be hanging on the walls. So if we could maybe reestablish that, or think about reestablishing that same process and helping to facilitate the goals of the Gallery Road District, maybe that's something we'd like to look at.
I think it could be. I attended the workshop that Ben and Kelly conducted, and the most impressive thing there is that there are a lot of new, young owners in some of those galleries and shops that along in that district that have a lot of energy, and I think if we can help them out, that they've got a huge chance of success in revitalizing the arts district.
Right. Yes.
Yes.
One comment, just to follow up on what Susie said. The funding for the art program initially, at one point, we appropriated money through the budget, Then in order to stop any issues about taking, there were always people where you're not giving it to us, but you're giving it to the arts, even though it was apples and oranges. What we did was at the end of each budget year, if the budget was, if we had money left over, didn't spend everything that we allocated in a budget, we would take a certain percentage to keep it from going in fund balance and put it into the arts program. It was a formulated item. It was done. It wasn't discussed during the budget at all. It was just a formula that was done at the end of the budget year. You knew if you wanted to take 1% of how much money was in excess, that's how it started.
Back to Commissioner Walters' observations, public art is a powerful thing. The waterfront park in Chicago has some really fabulous public art that's very different. One is called The Bean. It's a big stainless steel, just sort of amorphous structure that people are fascinated by because you get these wonderful reflections and there's always a tremendous gathering of people around it. And it's one of the memorable images I have of a visit to Chicago. And so it does, public art does have the ability to enhance the image of the town, to make the town memorable, and to make a contribution to that district and the sort of the elevation of the art. So, yes.
Any other questions for
Something that Ben said there struck me, particularly given the last discussion we had on the condos. And that was this bit about the succession plans and you know, you could see loss of more galleries just due to changes in ownership. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't be just kind of looking at the zoning regs up there and the rest of it to see what we can facilitate or at least not block in terms of space changing. I know one of the galleries, the one that's just immediately, used to be immediately east of Jewelry by Gale, I almost bought that. Not as a gallery, but as a home.
Somebody decided as a home.
Yeah, well, and then I think it's changed again. But I mean, there's things happening there that we may need to just take a look at to be sure that, not that we're protecting it, but that we're preserving, enhancing, or doing what we can for some of these concepts that he's talked about with the shared space and new artists and that kind of thing.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your interest in the topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. Sure. Appreciate your work. Next item is old business, consideration of a hurricane disaster agreement with Dare County that we sent back for rework last month. Mr. Lighty, do you have that?
Yes, sir. That particular agreement, that's the interlocal agreement between the town, Dare County, and the other municipalities in Dare County. That agreement is satisfactory as presented.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion second to adopt. Any discussion? All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. There being none. Okay. Next item is a review of the Comcast Charter Communications combined franchise from our last meeting. Mr. Lighty?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is regarding documents that the town received from Comcast with regard to the proposed Charter Cable Comcast reorganization. Those documents provide that Charter and Comcast have entered into an agreement whereby the cable franchise that the town has granted will be transferred from Charter's ultimate control to Comcast's ultimate control, but that Comcast will then continue the franchise pursuant to the old agreement. Town Code Section 40-271 provides that the town must approve the sale or transfer of a franchise, although that approval may not be unreasonably denied or delayed. The documents that the town received from Comcast provide a sample resolution for the town to consider that would approve this transaction. There's a provision in that resolution, however, that I think the town needs to carefully consider, and for that reason we have not recommended that resolution yet. In particular, Section 3 of the resolution requires the town to confirm that there are no defaults under the franchise agreement, I don't know if that's true. I know that there have been concerns and quite a bit of discussion about the charter franchise and charter's performance over the years. If the town were to adopt the resolution as presented, you would be waiving any objections or concerns that you have about any defaults that may have occurred in the past. So before the town takes any action, I think you need to make sure that there are no such concerns. If the town does not want to provide that representation, then we would need to get back with Comcast and have them agree to revise that resolution. The town has 120 days to adopt this, to adopt a resolution approving the franchise from when this material was sent to the town. It was sent on June the 17th, so you've got some time to exercise this due diligence. But that's this item in a nutshell.
Any questions for Mr. Lighty?
You said we have 120 days, meaning we have to do it in 120? I was going to ask you, what's the alternative? If we don't?
The alternative would be that they would be released from any obligation to perform under the franchise agreement.
Let me ask another one. I thought that somewhere along the line, the state had taken over all of this, and in another year or so, the state owns the whole ball of wax, and we're not even involved.
That's correct, but you have an existing franchise agreement that was approved before the state legislation took that over.
So we're on the hook for a couple of years, and then in 2 years, they're going to come back and say.
I think that's correct. So, you know, again, hopefully, well, if there are any issues, they need to be brought out at this point. But if there are no such issues, then the idea would be that Comcast would continue under the existing charter franchise, same terms, same requirements.
One more.
Is it about the cable boxes?
The word default.
Anything that they have failed to do that they're required to do under the terms of the franchise agreement.
Not just money, it's performance and the whole nine yards.
That's correct.
Commissioner Cahoon?
Given that we haven't been able to do a thing since the state really took the money for the franchise and then redistributes it, what's the point in us having a franchise agreement when we have no ability to say or do anything that comes down the pike?
Is that a rhetorical question?
Well, I guess I'm asking, why are we voting on documents when we don't have any say-so over what's said in the franchise anyway?
The main reason is that your ordinance requires it. You have a specific ordinance that requires that you approve the transfer of any franchise agreement. You're correct. You don't really have much control over it. You just have a provision that requires that you approve these transfers within 120 days of when they occur.
And without it, we don't receive our share?
We currently receive between $5,000 and $6,000 a quarter under the existing franchise agreement with Charter. So without that agreement, I'm guessing those revenues would go away as well.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Walter?
Well, I mean, we have no way to confirm that there are no defaults, no way whatsoever. So I'm not prepared to, you know, approve what's here. I mean, I think it needs to go back with an amended resolution, I guess.
We could inform Comcast of that y'all aren't prepared to make that representation, but this is the resolution that you would adopt, and it would remove that particular section and see whether they would object to that. I mean, it's still an approval of the transfer. I mean, then that's what you're required to do, so it just wouldn't be waiving anything.
Under their defaults, failure to provide adequate service would be a default, wouldn't it?
One, you know, yes, that would be one. There may be other things that they're required to do, certain volume, certain types of response time. There's probably a variety of details under that agreement.
I think we have a number of citizens right now that would certainly go on board that Charter has failed to provide adequate service, particularly in this transition period. Any number of our citizens, I'm not willing to sign off on that they are default free right now. And I was just wondering if there's anything that we can do in this transition that would encourage the Charter to clean up the problems that currently exist with so many of their customers.
Well, one question would be, and I don't believe you received, to my knowledge, this has not occurred, but would be having a representative from Comcast come make a presentation at an upcoming meeting about what, if anything, they intend to change about operations going forward. That might be useful to have. may or may not be useful, but certainly wouldn't hurt.
I would certainly like to hear it anyway.
Right.
Glad I don't have to make that presentation.
All right, we can request that too when we talk with them about these revisions. Is the consensus that we do that we go back to them with a revised resolution and ask that they come and present at an upcoming meeting within this 120-day period?
Is that a consensus?
All right.
That's a
That's what we'll
consensus that we do that. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next on the committee reports, I know Mr. Ratzenberger has a committee report that we got an email last night or this morning. Or anyone else with a committee report?
Okay, real quickly, while I was gone, the YMCA Master Planning Committee finally met, and I was unable to attend, but I've got a makeup session scheduled for next week, so I hope to tell you next meeting what's going on and be fully participating. I want to take the time to apologize to the audience and Mr. Ruckel and everything. When I got back, I read the article in the Coastland Times, 22 June, page 14, on our meeting. And in it, he made the note that it sounds, and possibly the way I said it, that I was frustrated with the Albemarle Commission Rural Planning point system. It's not the Commission's point system, it's the state point system. The Albemarle Planning Organization is suffering under it. We all are, as is the divisions. And it's highly complicated and it's frustrating. I attended another meeting last night in Edenton, which is the Division I scoring meeting to go over their process and the scoring that they've got. And what I'd like to do is possibly mid-month or at least August, I'd like to ask the board if I could maybe give a short presentation that explains ARPOs and divisions and in general the scoring things, so you get a better understanding of it. Part of my concern coming back from that thing is, and I think we have it on the July agenda, but the bike plan that we saw last meeting, we actually need to approve that by the 30th of July, or two of our projects will come off the list, because they were put on there contingent for the approval of that bike plan. And number two, I believe, and I'm going to work with Kelly and Cliff, we can at least do something to fix up our scoring, even if it doesn't help, by going back and I'm going to use that bike plan as an example, and provide some documentation or some input, even just some text descriptions of our areas and our intents and what it is. And ARPO and Division I will forward that to the state to get into the scoring process. So I think we can work on that. Anyway, that was it. I won't confuse anybody with more details.
Okay, thank you very much. How about, could you get your presentation together and have it at our July mid-month?
Sure.
Let's do that. I think that'll be a lighter agenda than August, and hopefully we will not have August mid-month. Next item is consideration of amendment to the traffic control map designating no parking tollway zone at Engagement Hill Loop. Chief?
Mayor, thank you. Part of the police department's duties that we continually check on parking throughout the town. In coordination with Commissioner Cahoon, we recently did a survey, and it was before you last month at your meeting to amend the traffic control map to allow more on-street parking in areas that we feel like would be beneficial to our residents and visitors, especially across the street from beach accesses and areas where on-street parking could be done and would not cause traffic concerns. Something that I've been watching for a period of time is the area around Engagement Hill Loop, and I'm focusing on the north entrance. Engagement Hill Loop is just what it says. It's a horseshoe-shaped street, and I'm talking about the northern portion of Engagement Hill. Courtney Fowler, through the Village Realty, helps the homeowners association in that group, and she's given me some information over the last 2 years about parking concerns in this particular area. I've monitored it over, like I said, a period of time, and I think Roberta has some pictures that you can put up. This is an area, and again, we're focusing on Engagement Hill Loop, and this is the northern entrance exit, and this is looking south. And what you find is Enterprise Street beach access is almost directly across the street from this northern entrance. Loggerhead would be the next beach access up next to the Quay condos. This is if you're sitting at Engagement Hill Loop, looking back towards the north. Again, it's on the west side of the beach road. As recently as when Commissioner Cahoon and I were doing our survey, and maybe last year when we were looking at this, what I found, and Roberta, can you back up just one picture for me? Sure. That's all right. What I found, and you can see here, what I see developing is, before people were parking there, but they were parking further off the road. They were further west. They were off the road more. As that area, it's really sandy. If you can see up right here in this area, it's really sandy in that area. And I told Commissioner Cahoon, really the only problem that I saw was a few people getting stuck, which we were able to help and get them out. But what we've seen is, and you can see where this vehicle is, I mean, he's all the way up by the curb itself. I took this picture myself, and I literally I was out in the road trying to check before making my turn. So where I monitored it last year, I think this year it's changed because it being so sandy. I think people have continued to park there, and they've just migrated more out towards the road. And now, as that fills up, then they start coming this way. And as you said, this guy's right here on the curb, which it's definitely a concern to me. The next picture, Roberta, please, number 3 that you had just shown in it. And this just shows, this is me going, I'm pulled over on the east side of the beach road, and it just kind of shows the vehicles parked there alongside NC-12. My recommendation through the Homeowners Association at Seven Sisters, they had recommended the entire Engagement Hill Loop, north and south, be designated as a no parking area. I do not agree with that, and I told Ms. Fowler that I did not agree with that. And my recommendation is let's do a little bit, to see if it helps. And if we need to go back and address the south end of Engagement Hill Loop, we can do that at the time. But my recommendation would be on the northern part of Engagement Hill Loop, north and south of that area, to designate it as a no parking area. It's not a problem every day, but when it does occur, we've seen it develop into something like you see here in these pictures.
Any questions for Chief Franklin? Mayor Pro Tem Walters, you have a question?
Well, I was the owner of the one house for many years, and it's only problematic in the summer.
Yes, ma'am.
And I've really never seen anyone park that close to the curb.
Yes, ma'am.
But there is, it's been going on for years.
Yes, ma'am.
So I would not agree with, making all of that no parking, because
No,
the
ma'am.
accesses are small. People are here waiting for the changeover, waiting to get into their cottages. It's largely on Saturdays. It's not, or it was not typically, a 7 days of the week thing. So
I know here, and again, I agree with you, I would not make the entire area along Engagement Hill Loop a no parking area. It's not an everyday problem. Last week it was 4 out of the 5 days, though, that was parking, and mainly it was on the north side. It was just here in this area, the south side of Engagement Hill Loop, maybe 1 or 2 cars, but that was not as big a problem. But still, the one day that I took pictures, it did show cars there, and it does impede. And I agree, it's definitely a summertime thing, and it does not occur 7 days a week. But it has changed over the years. Mainly, I'm guessing because of the sandy conditions here, where people have gotten further out onto the beach road.
Chief, are you able to point 200 feet, estimate from the curb?
What I did was 8 to 10 vehicles And that was my thinking. I didn't use any mathematics in coming up with that distance, but I did just look at the number of vehicles and try to estimate from where I was sitting to try to make that turn, how far down it would be a safe distance.
Would anything less than 200 feet, would you still be able to have the right sight triangle? Or is 200 feet the minimum you need to have?
I don't think it's minimum. What I looked at was just 8 or 10 vehicles and came up with that distance. I think anything in this area would help, because if you go back, Mr. Roberta, to where I think it's one where I was trying to pull out, or two. Of course, that's looking south. And if you could go back to the other one, right there, I mean, you can't see anything. I mean, if you went 5 vehicles, 4 vehicles, but I think something there would be better than nothing. And I understand Enterprise Street beach access is very popular, and much like Commissioner Cahoon when we did our survey, I want to have parking available for our residents and visitors, but at the same time, I think this has developed into an issue.
Commissioner Cahoon?
I have a couple leading questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you flip forward one more, Roberta? Yeah, this one. I see that one's a problem, but you're not proposing going all the way back to that one, are you?
Further.
Further than that.
Go back to the last one would be
You really
200
want-
feet,
That'd be
easily.
200 feet.
That
Easy.
seems to me rather excessive. What you need is a sight line, but I don't know that your sight line goes all the way down to there. Not many streets with houses and driveways have 200 feet like that. And the other question would be, what months of the year you're proposing this?
It's only a problem during the summertime, so.
So do you have date specific?
No, ma'am, I do not. I don't know, I'm not aware of any other areas in the town where we limit parking just during the summer months and then take the signs up in the wintertime, because it's not a problem during the winter. If we want to do that, that's
But
fine. I'm just not aware of any areas like that.
My concern is, if it's not a problem, why leave it up all year round? If it's only a summertime problem, why penalize everybody all the time? Because half those houses in Engagement Hill Loop aren't even going to be occupied all winter long.
Correct.
So,
Nobody's going to want to park there in the wintertime.
right, well, hopefully they'll have some access, but there's still areas.
Sign won't make it a difference in the
But
wintertime.
I just think going all the way back to that last one is very excessive, because we didn't do that when we, heck, those cars in that driveway for that house can stick out further than that, and you can't see. But I'd like to see us take a little bit more reasonable approach to it and make sure that we're safety conscious with a sight line, but I'm just not one that's in for it all year long.
Again, I just feel like this area is very unique. You don't have parallel parking along the beach road in a lot of places. I understand that we want more on-street parking. You and I did our survey. But as you can see, whether it's one day or 2 days, if we don't do something and there's an accident that occurs with parking like that, to me, I just don't want to have, and I discussed that with the manager, that I've definitely had a concern, and it's not year-round, it's not 7 days a week. And Commissioner Croon, I agree with you if you want to limit it just during the summer months. I just didn't propose that because I'm not aware of any areas in town where we currently do that.
Same concern. 200 feet is 10 vehicles, and that's at our parking standard. It's not even real live vehicles, a lot of which are smaller. I would think we could get away. I mean, I see an issue. Most of it was caused by a guy who made a bad decision for parking anyway. I mean, I don't care what the standards are. And we need to block that corner, something from the corner. But I would think 4 or 5 vehicles max would be adequate to just from the very corner. So 4 times 20 is 80, 60, 80. Well, they're not parked tight either.
Well,
so,
I know, but that's
somewhere
essentially
about there. 4 or 5 vehicles will give you your sight picture.
That end of that car is probably close to 90 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, we design parking lots with less sight triangle than that.
Mm-hmm.
And how can we expect a commercial structure?
Here comes the engineer.
Good morning. We had a similar
line we need.
We had a similar situation to this last year down there at Isabella Street and the Outer Banks Pier. There's 2 ways to approach this. One is town code. The town code has sight distance triangles at street intersections, and that's a 10-foot by 70-foot sight distance triangle. The other way is you can use the Federal Highway Administration criteria, which evaluates speed, geometrics of the existing roadway. That's going to be a little bit more conservative. So we can use as a basis the sight distance triangle methodology that we currently have in our ordinance, which is the 10-foot by 70-foot sight distance triangle, and that's measured from the western portion of the right-of-way margin inward. So what ends up being 70 feet might be a projection of more like 100 foot by the time that you project that line to account for a situation like this.
That sounds like it's bringing it down a bit.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Walter.
Can you put up the picture that, it's probably the previous one.
Photo 2?
That one.
Shows
You see the end of the brick wall, which is actually the property owner's, he sort of captured that years ago. It's a new property owner now, but what is the distance? I mean, what, can you estimate that distance for me? Because that's reasonable if it were in my head. At the end, if you couldn't park, you know, south of that wall, it seems like that gives, based on the speed of traffic there.
To about that point right there?
Yes.
Approximately 40 foot would be a good estimation.
Well, I can pull out of any restaurant on the beach road on any given day in the summer and rarely have that much distance to city. Let me just, which is a good thing. That means everybody's successful. I think the proposal, even though they want no parking all along the highway, and you're really not recommending that, that is what's going to occur based on the distance proposed. So
I think it's important to note that we don't focus just on this Dodge vehicle here, though.
I understand.
Even take that away, you're not going to be able to see. I've been by there countless days, and I know you have as a former property owner there. And like I said, it's up to, I know you as the Board of Commissioners will make that decision. If we want to scale back the 200 feet, what you'll see as you get further down is there are driveways, and there's very few places to park anywhere along, at any rate along that property, because there's driveway after driveway. So
they also have no parking signs in the entire subdivision.
Yes, ma'am.
That were requested by someone years ago.
Yes, ma'am.
And I couldn't even park my own car in front of the house. So,
at some point in time, and maybe Commissioner Cahoon from our previous project, could look at that, because there's areas within there that have rock along the right of way, and it wouldn't be a problem to allow parking like that.
I don't know.
I want to get back on, but can we get back on, I like what Mayor Pro Tem Walter said. That wall right there looks like a good marker. I mean, and we all back in and out of stuff all over, up and down. Every Sunday morning, I take everybody's life in hand, backing out of Commissioner Cahoon's shop into the, it's life. So I suspect there's more to this request than we can see.
Brave, that kind of angle over there.
I like the little rock wall is about the max amount.
What does our?
I don't.
We
I'm not
have-
good
we
at
have
judging
a-
that.
we have an
The
ordinance
rock
and-
walls are good.
Go back to what our ordinance said. That would be probably a 70-foot line of sight if we went with the ordinance.
Yes, it's a 10-foot wide by 70-foot long sight distance triangle. And again,
That
where
would be
that's
from the north edge of that driveway, or where would it be started from?
That's right. Where the right-of-way for Seven Sisters intersects with the right-of-way margin for NC 12. And basically, it would be measured westward of that and then projected 70 foot out.
So that gets us
Is that from the center of the roadway? Or no?
No,
From
it's
the
measured
corner?
from the right-of-way margin.
From right there.
Probably from that pole, somewhere around there.
Around that pole, probably.
70 feet. Take it past the,
Put it back by the third car.
maybe 20 feet beyond at most, beyond the rock wall.
Rock wall, right.
Well,
I believe the right-of-way is actually back in here. So basically, if we started from this point, then it would be 10 foot back from here and then projected 70 foot to the north. So basically, that projection is actually going to be more like 100 foot by the time that you get to this point up here.
Oh, that's old. Oh. North side only?
Ready for a motion?
Yes, I'm ready for a motion.
I make a motion that we adopt the town's sight line as the basis for no parking signs for Engagement Hill Loop on the north side. And were you proposing south side as well, Chief?
Yes, ma'am.
North and south side of that first street to Engagement Hill Loop.
There's a second to that motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded that we use the town ordinance, line of sight ordinance in determining where the no parking signs should be, both north and south of Engagement Hill Loop. In a discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. There being none. Okay?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next item is our consideration of proposals for storm debris monitoring and removal. David?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On May 27, 2014, and again on June 19, 2014, the town issued requests for proposals for post-storm debris cleanup and monitoring services for the period covering July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2015. The requests for proposals were sent to 23 separate firms, 13 for debris removal and 10 for debris monitoring services. Public Works received and evaluated 4 separate proposals for post-storm debris cleanup. They were received from RPC Contracting of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, a local contractor, Phillips & Jordan with an office located out of Robbinsville, North Carolina, Series Environmental Services out of Sarasota, Florida, and DRC Emergency Services, LLC, out of Mobile, Alabama. The last 3 are national contractors. In addition, 2 proposals were received for debris monitoring services. They were received from Witt O'Brien's, LLC, out of Washington, D.C., and also from Lados Incorporated out of Maitland, Florida. The recommendation for post-debris storm cleanup is for DRC Emergency Services due to their rapid mobilization time, ability to pre-stage equipment, major event response experience, experience with FEMA reimbursement, and competitive unit prices for loading and hauling of debris. And they would serve as the town's primary debris removal contractor for response to a major storm event. As far as the debris monitoring services is concerned, the recommendation is for Witt O'Brien's, LLC, for post-event monitoring services. They have significant experience in dealing with many types of natural disasters throughout the U.S. and have recently provided services in New Hanover County, North Carolina, Columbia, Georgia, and numerous municipalities in New Jersey post-Superstorm Sandy. This request is for the town manager to authorize him to enter into agreement for both the storm debris cleanup and monitoring services for 1 year for fiscal year 14-15. A comparative cost analysis matrix is included in your packet for review, which was based upon the evaluation criteria that was described within the request for proposals. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have regarding this.
Any questions for David? Yes.
Who did we
Commissioner
use
Ratzenberger.
last year?
Last year, we had 2 separate debris removal contractors. That was RPC of Kitty Hawk and Bird Brothers, located out of Wilson, North Carolina. And then as far as debris monitoring services, we had Witt O'Brien's that we had under contract.
You know, I guess my other question on the I mean, I heard about, well, they've got experience with this, that, and all, and everything, but all I have is this. And so what's it gonna cost for a Isabel type event for these guys? Do we have like a scenario that we can plug in X number of loads of this and that and the rest of it and say, because, you know, buy the dump truck sometimes or buy the dozer, DRC is more costly than the other guys. So I don't know what this means.
Yes, sir. That was outlined within the RFP. So for them, in order to go ahead and generate their proposals, we had basically used historical data from Irene to say X number of loads of C&D, X number of loads of vegetative removal. So they used that as a baseline for their pricing. Now, when considering pricing, yes, you will see between Phillips and Jordan and also DRC that for the various types of equipment, one is lower than the other. In fact, if you look through the number of items of criteria outlined within that matrix, I think that Phillips and Jordan is lowest on 21 separate categories, and DRC is lowest on 11 separate categories. But what it comes down to is how those services have been utilized in the past. And basically it's consisted of hauling of that C&D and vegetative material. And if you look at, if you can just scan down a little bit further, you will see those two green boxes right there. Those are the primary services that have been utilized in the past, and the DRC emergency services is the lowest for those two categories. So yes, we evaluated how they've been utilized in the past, and that's been part of the basis of the consideration for this recommendation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Coon?
You talked about pre-positioning of equipment. How long does it take them to pre-position? I mean, I know we've always tried to use somebody local because they had equipment here. What's the pre-positioning timeline?
We looked at this in two different ways, whether they would pre-stage equipment, and yes, DRC Emergency Services said that they would pre-stage equipment at no additional cost, where some of the other contractors indicated that there would be a charge for it or they would not pre-stage equipment. The other was the timeline of how soon they could get out here. And DRC Emergency Services indicated they could get out here within the 24 to 48 hour period.
So if they needed pre-stage equipment, they could be here tomorrow?
Upon activation of the contract.
Well, if we activated it today, 24 hours is tomorrow afternoon.
That is a possibility. I have not had those conversations yet with them, but yes, that's what they have indicated in their proposal.
RPC didn't respond to
the
quote.
They did respond. As you can see, that approximately half of the criteria that was given they did not complete, and only in 3 separate categories did they have the lowest pricing. And so when it came down to it, they weren't fairly competitive within their pricing. And the main thing with all this is that we want to ensure that we receive FEMA reimbursement. And one of the criteria from FEMA is that you cannot show a geographical preference to any contractors that you choose. That's laid out in Chapter 44 of the Code of Federal Regulations, and the town attorney can correct me on that if I'm wrong. But we wanted to make sure that, one, we weren't showing any geographical preference, and two, we wanted to get the best price for the services that we are going to need during those times.
And you're confident the way the recommendations you made will meet FEMA requirements?
Yes, sir. In fact, not having experience before coming on board with the town, I've gotten a real education in the Public Assistance Manual 325 and also 327 for debris removal and monitoring. Have had numerous conversations with North Carolina Emergency Management and Andy Ennis, and then also review of the contracts with the town attorney we've had several rounds of going through those contracts to ensure that all the FEMA requirements have been met.
Any further questions for David? Okay, thank you, David. Very good report. Do we have a motion on the floor?
I'll make the motion that we approve these two, the post-storm debris cleanup and contract and the monitoring contract as presented.
That would be a motion to empower the town manager to enter into contract with these two outfits, okay? Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't have any, I can ask it after we vote.
Go ahead, before we vote.
Well, I mean, I understand that we let this contract at the beginning of each fiscal year. You know, next year it could be, you know, on the 6th. And we would be behind the 8 ball. Is there any way to back this process up some so that we are doing more work earlier in the year to secure these contracts? Or do we have to wait until the 1st of July every fiscal year before we let a contract? Because we could be in real trouble.
Yes, ma'am, and I can address that. As far as the timing of this presentation, this is my responsibility. I've been delayed by other project-related timelines, and it's my responsibility for presenting this to you later than it should have. How this RFP has been proposed is that we have the option to go ahead and extend this contract 2 additional years. That would be through 15-16 and 16-17, should we choose to do so if we were happy with those services. So this is not something that we have to do each and every year. We're hoping that we can go ahead and do this once every 3 or 4 years.
And if the contract is extended, do the rates get renegotiated each year, or the rates stay the same?
The rates would be negotiated at that time. The way that it's worked in the past is those rates have remained constant for the most part.
Thank you.
David, could we enter into this contract, say, so that it ends before hurricane season next year? And so we would, if we did need a new contractor, we'd have a new contractor on board before hurricane season, maybe have this contract end May 31st or something like that?
Yes, sir. That was my intent this year, but again, my apologies for not having it to you sooner.
I need to comment on that. I probably share a good deal of responsibility on this timing also. I've been leaning pretty hard on the town manager and the engineer to do a lot of work in the stormwater area, and I'm sure that's gotten in the way of some of this. So I apologize to the board for some of that delay also.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Motion on the floor that we enable the town manager to enter contracts with these two firms for services that are spelled out. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign.
Nay.
Nay. It's so ordered on 4-1 vote. Next item is consideration of a resolution exempting town projects from GS 143-64-31, Declaration of Public Policy for Engineering Services.
Okay, I guess I'm still up.
Yes.
In the state of North Carolina, the procurement of professional services performed by architects, engineers, surveyors, and construction managers at risk is governed by General Statute 143-64.31, which is sometimes referred to as the Mini Brooks Act. This procurement process is a qualification-based selection that focuses on the qualification of potential firms rather than their fees or the price of the contract. So it's basically the best qualified without regard to fee or price. Local governments must use this process when selecting an architect, engineer, or surveyor. General Statute 143-64-30.32 authorizes a unit of local government to exempt itself from the Mini Brooks Act. This statute does not impose much in the way of requirements for utilizing this exemption. It simply requires a unit to put the exemption in writing, and it must be project specific. So blanket exemptions are not permissible. And the exemption is also capped to an estimated price of $50,000 for those services. So a review of the planned construction projects for fiscal year 14-15 and the potential for any professional services that may be required. I've gone ahead and outlined the specific projects and the scope of services that would be included for this upcoming fiscal year to try to encompass all of the projects that may require professional services. And primarily this relates to surveying services. I'll just go ahead and give you a brief outline of what those surveying services are and what project they would be related to. The South Nags Head drainage maintenance plan, and I'll speak to you later about the specifics of that, and the potential for surveying services that would be required for that. That could possibly consist of existing conditions survey, any construction stakeout that may be needed, and a construction record survey. Same thing for the West Side multi-use path in the next phase of the development of that infrastructure. The Jockeys Ridge water main extension for construction stakeout and a construction record survey. The South Memorial Avenue water main extension, again, construction stakeout and construction record survey services that may be needed. And also the Soundside Boardwalk. Any potential wetland surveys, construction stakeout, or construction record surveys that potentially may be needed for that. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have pertaining to this resolution.
Any questions for David? Yes, Commissioner Ratzenberg.
This 50,000 is a per contract cap or a total?
Per project cap.
Per project or per contract?
Correct.
Okay, because a contract could do 2 projects if you wanted to. And the reason I ask that is that I'm not, the resolution is not, to me, is conflicting because it starts out talking about contracts. And then the last whereas, as, 1, 2, 3, 4. It says design services for the above projects. Well, it's really
multiple projects.
It's multiple projects, but it's really described as contracts. So that's, to me, there's a difference. I mean, I could have 2 or 3 projects contracted to one firm, or something like that, or separate. And then in the section 1, it says the above described project singular is singular hereby, when in fact we've got multiples. So there's some wording issues with this resolution that they don't convey that this is an each, 50,000 each, or that it's a cap, in the whereas. So I don't, I have a little problem with the wording on it, not the concept.
Typically, it applies to a singular project. In this case, we try to encompass all of the proposed projects that we have within the near future. So you're right. In the wording, it should be plural, not singular, I think, under that first whereas.
Any other questions? Commissioner?
Just on the same track, the second whereas talks about 1 or more contracts. So So the way I read it was this was all going, could all be rolled together under 50,000. And perhaps one contract would cover the whole thing, but it could be broken apart.
Yes, yeah, it's, again, there's not a whole lot of guidance that is given to how it should be in writing, other than the fact that it should be related to a project basis, and then it should be in writing. So, in the way that it was described for the South Nags Head Drainage Maintenance Plan, there could be several different contracts that could fall under that scope. But in total, I don't think that they would have to meet that 50,000 threshold, that would be individual. And the town attorney may weigh in on that and that interpretation.
Well, again, it's Mr. Ryan is correct in that the $50,000 limit is a per project limit. And so it's a question of how you want to group or separate these items as projects. So if you could have multiple individual projects, each of which has a design fee of less than $50,000, and have this particular exemption. Frankly, my reading is that, maybe this is wrong, but my reading was that you sort of divided this with the semicolons, so that one was one set of projects, another one was another set of projects.
That's correct.
And if that's the case, and each one, and again, that really amounts to two separate projects essentially. And if each of those two projects is less than $50,000 each, then this is permissible.
Right. And
that was how I understood it.
And in review of the anticipated surveying services that would be outlined for these specific projects, I don't anticipate that either one of them, either in part or total, will come close to that $50,000 threshold.
Okay, I totally missed a semicolon distinction here.
Well,
I got it now that you mentioned it. I missed it when I read it. So you're saying that South Nags Head Ditch Maintenance Plan, West Side Multi-Use Plan, Jockey's Ridge Water Main Extension, and NC-12 Maintenance, semicolon, is a project.
That was my understanding. Is that correct?
Was that your intent?
No, the intent that they are all separate projects.
Okay, so the semicolon is probably a comma.
Yeah.
Should be a comma. Okay. All right.
Mr. Lighty, what do we need to do to clarify the language here so that
I think
we
the
know
thing
what we're
to
talking
do.
about?
No, I think this is a valid point, and I think the thing to do. Let me get my pointer. I love to use. First, I'd probably take the semicolon out, but I think maybe the way to do it is to enter into one or more contracts for the following projects, and then do a colon and list each one. And then down here, the estimated fee, and I think I put for each of the above described projects is less than 50. I think that narrows it down.
And then in section 1,
Yeah. Section.
make that plural, projects.
Projects
That
are.
would be project, that would be plural also.
I would say each of the above described projects
There we go.
is hereby made. I don't know if,
Dave, what would it do to you if we delayed the approval of this resolution until our mid-month so we can make those language changes and everybody take a good look at them?
It would push back the scheduling, or the tentative schedule that we have for work for this South Nags Head Drainage Maintenance Plan 2 weeks.
Can we make those modifications now? Commissioner Cahoon?
While I'm very appreciative of the South Nags Head Maintenance Ditch, and one of the top priorities for us is to go ahead and get the Jockey's Ridge Water Main Extension. Would it affect that?
Yes.
That's one that's going to loop, and that's real important to a lot of residents to get clean water.
Yes, ma'am. I'm fully aware of that, and hope that within the next several weeks, we can go ahead and complete those design plans, get that system permitted, so we can go to construction this fall. I think the plan all along is to go to construction during the off-season, so those residents back there in the villas will not be disturbed or impacted by that construction, or try to minimize that impact as much as possible.
Because that's real important. That water loop is important both to the residents and to the firefighting capability, as well as our water quality.
Understood.
So I think that was a top priority at one point.
Could we take a 10-minute break now and let Roberta fix this so we can come back and approve it at this meeting?
Yeah. Agreed.
Let's break for 10 minutes, please. Thank you. Board's back in session. We've got the resolution revised. Page up a little. Oh, excuse me, page down a little. Okay, do we have a motion to accept the resolution as amended?
So moved.
Moved. Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. In discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. So ordered. Thank you, Dave. Next item, items referred to Mr. Leidy.
First thing I want to comment on is the issue about the privilege license tax and privilege licensing in general. I've asked Ben Gallup to take a look at this, and I'm going to just relay to you his thoughts about this. As you know, the General Assembly took away the ability of the town to impose a privilege license tax under Chapter 160A, Section 211, but it left intact a provision in Section 160A, Section 194, that allows a city to regulate and license occupations, businesses, trades, professions, and forms of amusement or entertainment, and to prohibit those that may be contrary to the public health, welfare, safety, order, or convenience. In licensing trades, occupations, and professions, the town may, consistent with the general law of the state, require applicants for licenses to be examined, which is basically the application process, and to charge a reasonable fee, therefore, which is like an application-type fee. It's really unclear what they mean by to charge, to be examined, but again, we think this is the basic fee for the licensing application process. We also think that the fee that can be charged is probably limited to the actual cost to administer the program, but we'd like to look at that a little bit further and see if we can come up with a general schedule of those types of fees that's different than the privilege license tax, but still an application type fee. So the bottom line is we believe the town can have some form of regulation for this kind of program, and we can probably prepare a proposed ordinance to do those things. It's just going to take a little bit more time than we've had to actually do that. But that is what we've been able to determine so far about the changes to this, number one. Secondly, I would like to request a closed session at the appropriate time in order to confer with the board to discuss the pending litigation in the town of Nags Head condemnation cases, and in fact in, bear with me one moment. These specific cases, the town's condemnation case against Nags Head Partnership, against VODFAM LLC, Billy Roughton, Patrick Trask, Hugh Patterson, and Lester Fiveash. And that's all that I have for the board at this time.
Can we combine that request for a closed session with the request by the town manager? So
Yes, sir. You certainly can.
Under the same section of the law.
Yes, sir. And when we get to that section, or that point in the meeting, or unless you want to do it now, but I'll be glad to give you the statute for that as well.
I think we're ready for that right now.
Okay. All right. Then you need a motion to go into closed session in order to confer with the board, with the town attorney regarding those listed matters of litigation, and also to confer with the attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege under General Statute 143-318.11A3.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll move into closed session.
Hey, Susie, do y'all still pay for like, oh, yeah, this one. Never mind.
Wait for Commissioner DeVeers. Board's back in session. Mr. Lighty, your report out.
Yes, sir. The board did confer with the town attorney regarding the litigation matters we discussed, as well as other matters within the attorney-client privilege, but no action was taken.
Okay, thank you very much. Board of Commissioners agenda, Commissioner
Mayor,
Walters.
before we leave, did we conclude the business license privilege thing with y'all are going to look into something?
Prepare a resolution, or prepare an ordinance.
Okay, so I just want to be sure we'd close the loop at the end of that.
Come back to us at our next meeting or August meeting.
And then from that, we might, then staff and I would have to go look through the code and change, like chapter 12 and that, or are you going to do that, or what?
Mr. Lighty will come back with proposed ordinance change.
Okay, cool. I just want, good.
Board of Commissioners agenda, Mayor Pro Tem Walters, would you like to bring forth the resolution that we talked about earlier?
Yes, in your packet, you've been provided two resolutions. One that we passed at the Dare County Tourism Board meeting a couple of weeks ago, opposing offshore exploration for natural gas and or oil. We have already gone on record opposing seismic testing, which is the precursor to much of that, and I believe this board in the past has also been on record, not this current sitting board, but previous boards have gone on record as opposing offshore exploration for oil and gas. So I would like to ask that we consider the resolution in your packet.
Any questions for Mayor Pro Tem Walters? Do we have a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to make the motion that we adopt a resolution opposing offshore drilling presented by Mayor Pro Tem Walters.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Thank you very much. Anything else?
That's it.
Commissioner Demers, you have a stormwater management project update?
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, you've been updated on several occasions here on groundwork that's been going on in terms of developing a viable program and expanding the existing program for stormwater flooding management. We have some significant commitments that have been in the works over the past year or two with large projects that need to be done, and it's going to eat up most of our funding. Nonetheless, we've been doing the best we can at your urging to look at some of the other imminent issues and trying to squeeze some type of activity out of the remaining funds that we do have to get some things done. But to give you the overall picture again and show you what some of the project timelines look like, Mr. Ryan's going to give us a view-graph presentation and discuss those, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. The past several board meetings, we've talked about where we've been, some of our more recently completed projects. Now it's time to talk about where we are going with our drainage efforts here in the near future. I've got several different spreadsheets that give you an update and then also some tentative scheduling to some of these projects. The first one that's up on the screen lists the top 3 priorities. I think that we have discussed this previously within board workshops, and they are as follows: the Red Drum Ocean Outfall Extension, South Virginia Dare Trail, and drainage maintenance and improvements along sections of that portion of the roadway, and then also South Nags Head and a ditch maintenance plan for specified areas within the length of 1243. Just to summarize where we are in the process of some of these top priorities, the Red Drum Ocean Outfall. Currently, we've are in the process of reviewing the agreements with DOT. They are planning on advertising the request for bid. They were going to send that out either this week or next week. We have a pre-bid meeting scheduled mid-month for a receipt of bids by the end of July, and the anticipated construction schedule is the tentative date is mid-September to go ahead and move forward with those improvements. That project, basically the town's share for that project is $250,000, which is going to be split into 2 one-year increments. And then also the town has material left over from the Park Service Ocean Outfall, which we are going to provide for this project. The amount of that material is about $50,000 that we're going to contribute to this project. Secondly, South Virginia Dare Trail. We've looked at the length of that corridor between A Street and Whalebone Junction, have found some localized flooding in certain areas, and have initiated contact with DOT in order to go ahead and resolve some of those problem areas. We're looking at probably a spring time frame of performing maintenance in that area, and initially we'll try to assist DOT with trying to pin down exactly what needs to be done in those certain problematic locations. And then thirdly is South Nags Head and along 1243 is we've kind of broken that up in a couple different phases. The first one being the milepost 18 area. That's the section of the curve of the road where we've seen significant water standing on the pavement after rainfall events. I've got a schedule that outlines the investigation, design, permitting, and construction. I've got that in the subsequent slide. And then also the other phases of that broken out into 1 mile increments. And they basically correspond with milepost markers, again, in order to perform some survey work, design work, permitting, and go to construction for that. You can go to the next slide. The milepost 18 work that we've labeled as phase 1, and basically the first part of that was what you heard earlier was the resolution for survey services, so we could put out a request for proposals to local survey firms in order for them to begin their investigation work there in that area. Then from there, award the survey work, complete the field work, prepare the design drawings, go through the permit submission, and then also the bid process before we go to construction. One of the things that has been added within that scheduling is a neighborhood meeting in order to inform the residents of the projected schedule and the impacts to them and their individual properties. There's an additional spreadsheet that outlines a very similar process that's for phases 2, 3, and 4, and that basically takes care of the west side ditch maintenance, and that basically ranges from milepost 19 to about milepost 21. And again, a similar set of procedures. The timeline is extended due to the fact that there will be some additional permitting requirements that will be involved other than that of the milepost 18 or phase 1 work. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have regarding this.
Any questions for Dave or Commissioner DeBeers? If not, good report.
All right.
Thank you very much for it.
Yep, thank you.
So like a lot of work's getting ready to get started anyway.
Yes, sir.
On my agenda, just a couple of.
I had a,
Okay,
remember, I had second half of my late night email.
Excuse me.
Yeah, sorry about that, but 3 items. First off, shoreline management. We just got back our completed survey from CSE for year 3 of the beach nourishment project. Looks very favorable. High percentage of retention, et cetera. I think it's already available on the town website if you want to see it. I'm awaiting the full report, which month or so, and on receipt of that report, and I'd like to ask the board, let me assemble some displays and information and conduct a little public workshop here to where we'll show where we were, where we are, somewhat simpler. Bring all the people in here and let them talk about their input, their concerns, or anything else. We always hear, well, it's the beach is going away from one or another, and so let's talk about it, and maybe even over a couple-day period where somebody says, I don't care what your chart shows, I've lost all my sand. Well, fine, we'll go back out there and look at it and do a follow-up. It's kind of a stepping off at the 3-year point. So. With that thing. So I would think maybe, it depends on when the report comes in. I'm not sure if we can do this in August, maybe September, given the amount of time, if we could fit it in. So I give you a little advance, see if anybody has any suggestions or objections to doing that.
John, I think it's a great idea, and I'm not suggesting one way or the other, just asking, would you intend to have CSE here for that workshop so that they could, if necessary, address any technical questions? I don't want to put it in their ballpark, but...
I hadn't really thought about it that far, frankly. I mean, I'm still catching up. It's probably a good idea, because otherwise I'm going to start babbling or something, and nobody needs that. So.
Along those lines, if we bring them up to do further surveys, how does that affect our contract with them?
Surveys would cost, but and I'm sure that we'd have some travel expense if they came, but that would be all if they were to come.
And how long is our monitoring contract with CSNE?
This was supposed to, we have 2 more years.
Okay. Because there's a lot of people that would like, perhaps if we monitor in the future, to do an independent monitoring, not utilize the same company that did it monitoring. There's everybody's kind of doing peer review and independent monitoring.
Okay, so I'll take that as a go.
Yeah, so I was going to say, get a plan together for a meeting, and I think we would need CSE there to answer questions also.
Okay.
And let's look at probably, I know it's a little bit way down the way, but maybe in September mid-month meeting after the summer rush is over and we get more people here.
Yeah.
Is everybody in agreement with that? Does that make sense? Okay.
Number 2, and this is more I don't think it's a reaction from anybody here, but it's a comment to the public. Full Throttle Arcade has plenty of parking on site. That's how they got permitted. So you don't need to be running across 158 in packs of 10 to 12 in the middle of all that traffic. That's a scary situation down there. So, and I don't want to take away from Full Throttle, but people need to be thinking about what they're doing down there with the traffic out there. And I've seen this a couple of times. Lastly, and I kind of like, this may be in Commissioner Cahoon's ballpark, or certainly in Ms. Thuman's. When we go on a break like this, we just cut the feed. And what's on the outside, here's a blank screen with no indication of what's happening. I was over chatting with Corey about that. And there ought to be a way, it seems to me there'd be a way we could put up a sign or even show just the motion with no audio, that such that somebody watching at home knows that while we're on break, they can. Right now they have a blank screen. They can see a sign or something that says we'll be back, and they know we're still alive and they just haven't lost their internet connection. So maybe something we could look at to provide break entertainment on break or something there. Just a thought.
Okay. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Everything. All right. Just a couple of things. One, our fireworks that were scheduled for 4th of July Friday night will occur on Saturday night, and we can get that announcement out to everybody. And that's because of the storm, Arthur, coming through. Will probably be clear Friday night, and won't everybody understand why we don't have fireworks, but somebody has to stage all of those things, and they can't be staged in the rain. So the staging is a problem. Control group, county control group is meeting. We met last night. We'll meet again tonight at 5:30 to get an update. It looks like the storm, as of last night, would hit Hatteras about 3 a.m. Friday morning with light hurricane force winds, and then by the time it moves up the coast and moves off the coast from there, we would, in this area, expect probably 50-mile-an-hour winds, but with lots of rain. And that will move pretty rapidly. The storm was projected to move about 20 to 25 miles an hour forward speed as of yesterday afternoon at the 5:30 update. If it does that by Friday afternoon, we might be clear. So all the 4th won't be rained out, I don't think, here. Is there any other business that we need to bring before the board?
Mr. Mayor, just inquiring kind of what the status is on proposed sale of Jeanette's Pier and any activity that we as a board or the staff might be doing to address that with code changes or anything like that?
I've passed on to staff some comments that I made at the time that the ordinances were changed, that delineated several of the ordinance changes that we need to look at to see how we can negate this possible sale of Jeanette's Pier. There are quite a few changes that we can make, and the staff is looking at now that could make that pier non-conforming, so that could only be used as a fishing pier. And that might be the approach it would take. That after staff looks at that, we do need to discuss that.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
Recess to the
excuse me,
mid-month meeting.
Recess to our mid-month meeting. Excuse me. Catch me.
Got that, Carol?
One motion. We have a motion that we recess to our mid-month meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So ordered. We'll see you July the 16th, 7 p.m.